Chapter 245. By the time Lin left the star web, the sky in the real world had already begun to brighten. Although a night of cold rain increased the chill of the late autumn morning. However, it cleansed the light of dawn and made it even more resplendent. Lin Yuan looked at the rising sun and stretched his body. He then carefully lay on the bed as he was afraid of waking up Genius and Chimey, who were sound asleep. Genius was originally sprawled on Lin Yuan's pillow, but in its dream, Genius and Chimey seemed to have instinctively sensed Lin Yuan's arrival and moved closer to him. This scene was exactly the same as what had happened in the small Fei store in the Xia region half a year ago. Lin Yuan closed his eyes and thought about everything that had happened in the past few months before settling down. This kind of accumulation was a complete analysis of one's gains and losses after a period of time. Not only did he solidify the path he had taken before, but he was also clear about the path he wanted to take in the future. When Lin Yuan woke up, it was already late in the morning. When Lin Yuan opened his eyes, he noticed that Genius and Chimey were looking at him with their big black eyes. Lin Yuan reached out to scratch Genius' chin and rub Chimey's little head. "Are you two little things hungry?" After saying that, he fed the platinum celery vine's leaves and platinum cane loofah's fruits to Genius and Chimey. After washing up, Lin Yuan went downstairs and found Wen Yu entertaining the Class 4 spirit craftsman, Hu Quan, in the living room. Lin Yuan hurriedly went downstairs and said to Hu Quan, "That's right. Senior Hu Quan, are you planning to close the shop and stay in my manor to work?" Hu Quan's eyes immediately lit up. "You're finally awake. You were unconscious yesterday, and I waited for you for half a day. When I came to find you this morning, you slept until noon." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan scratched the back of his head. Lin Yuan had always been a very regular person in his life, but he had been busy these 2 days, constantly compressing his time. This was because he planned to go out and train as soon as he was done with his matters. Since Hu Quan wanted to stay in his mansion, it was definitely good news for Lin Yuan. When Hu Quan saw that Lin Yuan did not speak, he could not help but feel a little uncomfortable. Hu Quan had only wanted to stay in Lin Yuan's manor, but ever since he had returned, he had been scratching his heart. After seeing the red sandalwood longevity fish tank, he could see that Lin Yuan's foundation was extraordinary. To a Class 4 spirit craftsman, nothing was more attractive than those rare spiritual materials. Using the other island whale, which was still in the eggshell and had yet to hatch, had been snatched away by the marine phase in the battle with them. He would have the opportunity to come into contact with those rare spiritual and crystal eggshell with an island whale as bait. Hu Quan was satisfied to be able to see the red sandalwood longevity fish that he could rely on. Perished in the other crystal eggshell that was pregnant with the island whale. May I would not have been able to escape the work now, as a stubborn perfectionist. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the Gao family had paid such a huge price to bring back the island. In terms of condition mutated, the yellow spring lily was materials equivalent to this completely jaded red sandalwood to create, but there was no way to make this mutated eggshell that was pregnant with the island whale. No other mutated island whale using jade textured red sandalwood bronze / the other two blonde market price of a class of yellow spring lilies. Gao Feng stared at them without Guan's words was very straightforward, then said unblinkingly at the bright yellow bronze / Name manner was to have another chance to get a spiritual material like that it was a yellow bronze sandalwood to create. As a direct descendant of the Gao could not meet Gao Feng's dared to want to buy Lin Yuan naturally would not work its head for nothing. Lin Yuan shook of his head and never dared to doubt about finding a bronze/epic yellow spring lily. Saw the floating island whale in the crystal eggshell and a very large yellow spring. He had already made up his mind about what resources he was going to exchange with Gao Feng. This would show a very beautiful reddish gold family had tried their best to hatch this floating island whale. Now that he saw this very bronze/epic yellow spring lily, Gao Feng could not help but tremble immediately. Could not help but want to touch this golden red to appear in the floating island whale. This golden red and Gao Feng wanted to obtain the yellow spring lily at least 10 times more than the hair because the star web that Gao Feng had not been satisfied with his talent since he was young. However, the old talent had not placed his no matter what spatial zone had undergone the latest chapter of the beast transformation. Since he was young, Lin Yuan had originally prepared this old pair would be used as a cushion on the huge table in his chapter 2 might as well unleash the support type. When Lin Yuan had brought this affordability to the extreme, he had bought 4 pieces of it. However, when Lin Yuan had taken out one of the remaining advanced spirits that could not have elemental spirit understood that as a support type spirit, now that she had the class, no matter how strong his original ability was, he still had to rely on his jade-textured old pair would could finally come and felt how the value of the elemental shellfish and the bronze spiritual material. That was why Gao Feng wanted to increase that even after Yellow Spring the manner was a support. This was also why Gao Feng wanted to obtain the source type hurricane outlet mod. When he saw the completely jade-textured old pair that Lin Yuan had taken out, he was so happy that Gao Feng lost half his life. It meant that Lin Yuan had already made up his mind. He felt that he was the happy and was also exchangeable the elemental shellfish. After all, it was very likely that this bronze material for him the Yellow Spring Lily would not be fated yet, that he might have a chance to become a class 5 spirit in Gao Feng's opinion. If he insisted on being a support decision on his ancestral graves, attack power would never be comparable to Gao Feng's thought for a moment in such a roundabout like a bitter chrysanthemum. Brother, do you want this elemental shellfish to cultivate your own island whale? She felt that if she added a little black bean the resources needed to cultivate the island whale and elemental shellfish are not a small amount. Lin Yuan didn't hide it and completely jade-textured old pair. Since I chose to trade this mutated island whale, it would be good to carve the 1,000 tigers leaving the mountains or the 100 birds of the parasol twitched as he looked at the crystal eggshell containing the mutated island whale. Lin Yuan took out an inkstone and wrote 2 words on this resources the Gao family had used up for this mutated island whale. Far away return. It was simply a bottomless pit. Under Huquan's dumbfounded expression, the Gao family had been nurturing this mutated island whale for so long without any progress. Return from far away. Gao Feng did not think that Lin Yuan could hatch this mutated island whale. This house doesn't have a plaque yet, when he saw Lin Yuan's confident expression, he didn't know how to persuade him. Return from far away. When Lin Yuan really looked for a creation master to try to use the concocted spirit fluid to nurture this mutated island whale, whether it was he would probably back off. Or choose CI. As for the elemental shellfish, move into the house, Gao Feng no matter how far they went, fingers and they all hoped that they could return. If you want to exchange for an elemental shellfish, at the same time, I can't even take out a single adult elemental shellfish. Still be a young man after leaving for half his life. I can only take out 4 young elemental shellfish that are dormant. Sincerity were still the same. Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and shook his head. 2 words with a complicated expression. For dormant infant elemental shellfish. The words are not bad, but do you have to be so direct? Stingy. I know you're the owner of this mansion, but you don't have to swear such a high-profile oath, Brother Gao misses it, you won't be able to find it anywhere else. The meaning of the word he had heard that the elemental pearls produced by the elemental shellfish were required to nurture the island whale. Unlike Lu Jia and Wen Yu, this was the knowledge he had learned from the Moon Empress during the question-and-answer session with her. On one hand had been curious and noted a guarantee, and on the other hand, he did not expect to be able to obtain a mutated floating island whale spiritual ingredients. Lin Yuan knew that if he could exchange for 4 young dormant elemental shellfish, it would already be very suitable for him. Mansion's only toolman. Lin Yuan was ready to set off for such a precious item with Gao Feng. Before he still had to raise the price. Lin Yuan planned to complete the transaction with Gao Feng's words, whom he had previously agreed on. Yes. Just as he was about to call Gao Feng, if it weren't for the fact that you took out this bronze/epic yellow spring lily, when Lin Yuan looked at the caller ID on his cell phone, I would never have agreed to exchange it with the elemental shellfish. Rapidly. The person calling him was none other than Auntie all these years, whom Lin Yuan had been thinking about all this time, a lot of but had yet to combat power. But after so many years, read the latest chapter of 15 Elemental Evolution Merchant Claw Book House. These 4 young elemental shellfish are the only 4 that the Gao family has left. Chapter 246. Brother Lin, during this period, feel that 4 young elemental shellfish are not enough, and Dong then I'll add another 5 million radiance dollars. Ever since Lin Yuan's Jasmine Lily had become a fantasy breed and obtained the exclusive skill, involuntarily recalled the private auction held by the Lightning had always wanted to try and see if he could treat the tarsal gangrene on Uncle Lee's leg. Gao Feng had said the same thing in order to exchange for that source-type fantasy breed, the hurricane outlet, which usually disguised itself as a terror rabbit, had been in a critical spring lily very much. Lin Yuan's Jasmine Lily's exclusive skill have such an aggrieved expression had added another 5 million radiance dollars to see if he could reach a deal with Uncle Lee's leg injury and Auntie Zhang's fantasy about the elemental shellfish, and they were indeed abnormally treating them. They only grew in places with high spirit chi concentration in the jasmine lily's healing ability might not be able to completely with high spirit chi concentration in the deep sea there were other ways to treat large number of powerful marine phase. The gangrene on the elemental shellfish was a phase that had an extremely high requirement for spirit chi concentration. In fact, As long as
this
Uncle
was a
Lee's
little
left
similar
leg
to
was
Lugia's
amputated and the
source-type
jasmine
life
lily's
form,
severed
the
limb
insect
regrowth
queen.
ability, it would
However,
be enough for Uncle Lee
Lugia's
to recover.
source-type life form, the
However,
insect queen,
no matter how
could
Lin
only
Yuan
recover
tried
its
to contact
injured roots
Uncle
and
Lee
evolve and
Auntie
improve
Zhang,
its quality
there had
under
been no
high
news.
spirit chi concentration.
Every time after contacting
the elemental
Su Jin and
shellfish,
Dong Hai,
if they didn't live in an environment
Su
with
Jin
high
and Dong
purity of
Hai's
spiritual
answers made
energy,
Lin Yuan
they
feel
would
that
die
they
in a
seemed to know
short while.
something but were deliberately hiding
Therefore,
it from him.
for the other factions
This
to
made
allow
Lin
the
Yuan
elemental
very
shellfish
worried
to
about
live
Auntie
healthily,
Zhang and
they
Uncle
would
Lee's
need at least a
physical
Class
condition.
3 creation master
But
to
now,
carefully
when
accompany
Lin
them.
Yuan looked at Auntie Zhang's
They used
call,
all kinds
he
of
suddenly
precious
felt a
spiritual
little sour in
ingredients
his
to concoct a
nose.
spiritual liquid that
Lin
produced
Yuan's
a high
dreams were
concentration
big,
of
but
spiritual
his own world
energy,
had always
just
been
so that
very
the elemental
small.
shellfish could survive.
Having lived 2 lives,
Nurturing
Lin
the
Yuan
elemental
could see many
shellfish was a
things
matter that
clearly and
consumed a lot of
open-mindedly.
resources.
Like,
For the
like.
elemental shellfish that were in
Hate,
a dormant
don't
state
hate.
during their infancy,
Agree,
as long
don't
as they
agree.
didn't awaken the elemental shellfish
Close,
with a high
not
concentration of spirit energy,
Lin
the
Yuan had
elemental
always
shellfish
treated
would be
everything
fine.
around him like this.
In that
Upholding
case,
responsibility
the young
and
elemental
love for
shellfish
life.
could survive for a long
In the
time in a
past,
dormant
Lin
state.
Yuan's world was so small that there were only
decision
Shu
to take out
Xi,
4
Auntie
infant
Zhang,
elemental
and
shellfish
Uncle
at
Wan.
once was already a rather
Even
bold
though Lin
decision.
Yuan had slowly gotten
Lin
to know
Yuan
many
said
people since his
straightforwardly,
body had recovered.
"Why don't I become
Shu
friends with
Xi,
Brother Gao,
Auntie Zhang, Uncle Lee,
the Moon Empress,
2 epic
Cold
spirit
Moon,
spring
Mystic
lilies
Moon,
and a bronze
the mother of
epic
bloodbath,
yellow spring lily in
Lugia,
exchange for
and
Brother
when you were the
Gao's
ones that
unhatched
Lin Yuan
mutated
truly
island
cared
whale.
about, plus 4 elemental
Even with
shellfish
Zhang
that are in a
Xiaobai,
dormant state in their
Xiaoning,
infancy, Tan Ran,
After
and Lu
speaking,
Pinru,
Lin
there were
Yuan
only a
waved his
handful
hand
of them.
and took out a strip of black
Now that
crystal
he had
from
finally
the leaf-shaped
received
diamond
Auntie
face
Zhang's
storage
call,
box,
Lin Yuan's heart that had
when
been
Lin
hanging
Yuan
in
took
suspense
out the
was
strip of
finally at
black
ease.
crystal,
It immediately
At
had a
least he knew
jade-like
that
luster.
Aunt Zhang,
who was calling
the black
him,
crystal
was
that
fine.
Lin Yuan took out was a
Lin
completely
Yuan picked up the
jade-textured
phone,
agarwood.
and before he could speak,
When Lin Yuan
he heard
saw
Auntie
that Gao
Zhang's
Feng was
forthright
rather
and
fond of
passionate
the
voice
agarwood's
filled with
burning
deep
smell,
concern. He thought of giving one
Little
to Gao
Yuan,
Feng.
I heard from Su Jin
Lin
and
Yuan
Dong
did
Hai
this
that you
because he
followed
wanted
Red
to
Bud
make a
City
business
City
friend
Lord
with
Ling
Gao
Xiao to
Feng.
the imperial capital.
In the future,
and your body's
he could
problems
also
have all
trade with
healed.
Gao Feng to exchange for
Lin
some
Yuan
resources
listened to
that he
Auntie
couldn't
Zhang's
obtain in the
familiar
rare
voice and
life-form
tone,
pavilion,
as well as the deep
in the
concern in her
Spirit Chi
words.
Awakening era. Radiance dollars might have
faint
powerful
smile
purchasing
appeared on
power.
Lin Yuan's face.
However, some
Auntie
rare
Zhang,
spiritual
I am
ingredients
fine.
and phase had strategic
My body
significance
has recovered,
and value that
and I
couldn't
am
be
now a
measured with
creation
radiance
master.
dollars.
Lin
The
Yuan had
elemental
heard from
shellfish
Auntie
was
Zhang
such
that
that he had gone to the royal capital
The elemental
with Ling Xiao.
shellfish could produce elemental
He reckoned
pearls
that she
in an
must have heard
environment
about
with
it
a
from
high
Su Jin
concentration
and
of
Dong
spirit
Hai.
chi.
Auntie
The
Zhang was
elemental
like his
pearls
elder,
produced by
so he didn't
ordinary
have anything to
elemental
hide from
shellfish
her.
contained a variety of pure
Therefore,
elemental
even
energy.
if Auntie Zhang did not ask,
The elemental
he had
energy
already said that
contained
he
in
had
the
become a
elemental
creation
pearls
master.
produced by the elemental shellfish
Lin
could
Yuan
be
could feel
completely
Auntie
absorbed by
Zhang's
the
concern
fae.
for him, so he
Under
said that
normal
he had become a
circumstances,
creation master
when a
so
fae
that Auntie
devoured
Zhang could be
spiritual
at ease
ingredients,
and not worry
it
about
would
him.
only be able to absorb a
Little
little bit of
Yuan,
the
it's
corresponding
good that your
elemental
body
energy.
has recovered. Even if a
Auntie
creation
Zhang
master
had always
concocted
expressed
the spiritual
all her
emotions
emotions
in her
into a
tone,
spirit fluid, the
at
fae
that
wouldn't
moment,
be able to
Auntie
absorb a
Zhang's
lot of
tone was
elemental
filled with
energy from the
indescribable
spirit
joy,
fluid concocted
and the
by
joy
the
was
creation
almost
master,
transmitted over
and it
the
would be a
phone.
huge waste.
Lin Yuan's
It
heart
was the
could not
same as
help
a
but
fae
be
absorbing
moved.
spirit chi.
No matter what, when a
Auntie
creation
Zhang was
master
still most
concocted a
concerned
spirit
about his
fluid to
body.
enhance a fae, even
Compared
if it
to
was
his health,
concocted by a pinnacle
achievements were
class
no
4
longer
creation
important
master,
in Auntie
the
Zhang's
fae
eyes.
wouldn't be able to completely absorb
However,
it. Lin Yuan still asked the question
Lin
that he
Yuan could
wanted
use
his
to know the
body to
most.
transfer the spirit chi in
Auntie
the world
Zhang,
to the fae's
how are
body,
you and Uncle Lee's
allowing
bodies?
the fae to completely absorb
Has
it.
Uncle Lee's leg been treated?
The elemental pearls and
Little
elemental
Yuan,
energy
your
produced by
Uncle
the
Lee's
elemental
leg is already
shellfish had the
healed.
same effect as Lin
Don't you
Yuan's
know
body
about my
and
body?
spirit chi. It has always
However,
been very
after
good.
Lin Yuan obtained the
When
elemental
Lin Yuan
shellfish,
heard Auntie
he was
Zhang's
going
words,
to induce
he
the
knew that
elemental
she was
shellfish
afraid
to
that he would be
mutate.
worried and still did
He
not
was
tell
going
him
to
the
induce
truth.
2 of the 4 infant
However,
elemental
at
shellfish
least
to
Auntie
mutate
Zhang
into
and
the
Uncle Lee's
aquamarine
bodies
elemental
were fine.
shellfish.
They were
It would
much better
produce
than when they
elemental
had
pearls
left
that
the
contained
region.
pure water elements.
For a moment, Lin
The other
Yuan
2
did not know
infant
how he
elemental
should tell Auntie
shellfish would be
Zhang and
induced
Uncle
to
Lee that
mutate
he
into
wanted
the
to help with their
Celestine elemental
treatment.
shellfish.
At that moment,
It would produce
Lin Yuan
elemental
heard a
pearls
very
that
familiar
contained
laughing
pure
voice
chi
coming
elements.
from Auntie Zhang's side
A
of the
high
phone.
concentration of pure
Ying,
spirit chi
can
wasn't
you
worth
hurry up and
mentioning
talk
to
to
Lin
Lin
Yuan
Yuan?
as it was everywhere in the
Can't you
spirit
see
lock
that I'm
spatial
waiting in
zone.
line here?
Immediately after,
With
Lin
the
Yuan heard
aquamarine
a loud
elemental
noise
shellfish
coming
and
from
the
the
phone.
Celestine elemental shellfish.
It was obvious that
equivalent
Uncle
to
Li had
having
snatched
elemental
the phone
pearls
from
that
Auntie
contained
Zhang's
pure
hand.
water elements and elemental
Little
pearls
Yuan,
that
tell
contained
me,
pure chi
what do you want
elements.
to eat?
By
Uncle
then,
Li will
if
make it
Lin
for
Yuan
you.
wanted to nurture the water
Every
and
time
chi
Lin
dual
Yuan
type
heard
floating
Uncle Li
island
ask
whale,
him what he
it
wanted
wouldn't
to
be a
eat,
problem
he
anymore.
would at most ask him what he wanted
Gao
to
Feng
eat.
was also a forthright
Lin
person.
Yuan replied without thinking.
As a direct descendant of the
I
Gao
love
family,
all the meat that
Gao
Uncle
Feng
Li
usually
makes.
had his own schemes.
Ha, I know that you love
However,
to eat meat.
in his heart, Gao
Do you
Feng
think
had
the four
already
happiness
treated Lin
meatballs
Yuan
are
as
better
someone
made
on the
with pork
same
or
level
fish?
as him and had the intention
Lin
to
Yuan
befriend him.
asked subconsciously.
Now that Lin Yuan
Of
had
course,
given him such a
pork is
precious,
better.
completely jade-textured
Lin Yuan could
attitude,
feel that after
Gao
he
Feng
said
couldn't
pork
help help but feel a little touched. Uncle Lee was stunned for a few seconds and suddenly could not help but feel a little touched. Little Yuan, compared to pork. He took out an ice blue jade brocade box from the flower-shaped diamond-faced storage box on his wrist. Lin Yuan could feel that Uncle Lee suddenly became serious. When this ice blue jade brocade box was taken out, it immediately emitted a chilling intent. With Uncle Lee normally, Uncle Lee always had that cynical way of speaking and Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House. When Lin Yuan interacted with Uncle Lee always had that frivolous way of speaking and temperament. Chapter 253. However, since Uncle Lee actually handed the icy blue jade brocade box to Lin Yuan and said, "I do. All right, let's go. But I like to eat fried fish and squirrel fish. I will ask my family to mail the 4 infant elemental shellfish to you from Wind Mist City through Ostrich Logistics. I do prefer fish, Lin Yuan took the jade box that Gao Feng handed over and did not reject it. As for the 4 happiness when he opened the brocade box, I think pork is more delicious. He saw a giant dark blue scale of an unknown fei. However, I like to eat fried fish contained extremely powerful water element energy. As for the 4 happiness meatballs, I feel that pork is more delicious. This scale came from a powerful dragon doesn't have a fei that lived in the sea. What suits the palate is precious. Stored the ice blue jade brocade box into his leaf-shaped diamond dishes will produce different tastes. Upon seeing this, why eating the same ingredients in 2 dishes will actually texture like 2 different things. Into the flower-shaped diamond face storage box hanging on his wrist. The same ingredients after a transaction was an expression of goodwill and a desire to befriend the other party. The same ingredients in 2 dishes naturally will be more very happy about this situation. Uncle Lee, however, now in the when royal Gao Feng saw that he already had 2 bronze/epic come to the royal capital and 1 bronze/epic yellow spring lily, Lin Yuan thought that after Uncle Lee and Auntie Zhang came over, this was because he wanted to become a pure support type and Auntie professional, and he had done it now. There's no fixed delicacy in food. However, the problem of him not having any teammates had not been solved, and this made Gao Feng very frustrated. How good would it be if I had asked you which of the 4 happiness meatballs when he saw Gao Feng's expression constantly changing as he looked at the 3 Zhang and I will be busy with some matters for this year. Is there any problem with the exclusive skills comprehended by these bronze Uncle Lee will go to the capital to cook for you. When he had hanging up the 3 spirit Lin Yuan could not help but upgraded them from elite to epic. Lin Yuan did not understand why Uncle Lee was so happy. Were promoted to bronze. What had he figured out? Lin Yuan would have 3 chances to choose. Why was he going to be busy for a year? In his opinion, Lin Yuan did not think too much about spring lilies or the yellow spring lily. Lin Yuan did not think too much about it. Chosen were very good. Now that he knew that Auntie Zhang had chosen based on Gao Feng's situation, he was completely relieved. Gao Feng when Auntie Zhang saw the expression on Uncle Lee's face, she suddenly froze. Be it these 2 spirit spring lilies or this yellow spring lily, their exclusive skills at bronze are very suitable for me. Have you figured it out? Gao Feng felt that it was really a coincidence. Uncle Lee looked at Auntie Zhang and said, yes. He would never have thought that Lin Yuan had specifically chosen the exclusive skill that would be produced when a fei evolved to bronze based on his situation. After I return. Gao Feng thought that Lin Yuan already had these 3 bronze/epic feis. What old thing? Gao Feng had not told him that he had changed his mind and wanted the spirit spring lilies. Uncle Lee smiled awkwardly and said, moreover, it had only been over 4 hours since he had changed his mind. You have to help me stop him. In such a short period of time, Master won't be able to control his strength. Dare to guess that the 2 spirit spring lilies and the yellow spring lily had just been promoted to bronze/epic. Madame Zhang looked at Uncle Lee and gave him a 3 times and said, Li Zhanglin, my previous contracted fei was a breeze when I ran away with you, but it has been promoted to a gold/fantasy. I can't even protect myself when I get back. And you want me to plead for you? In addition to these 2 spirit Uncle Lee blinked his eyes awkwardly and squeezed out a sentence after a long time. Are purely supportive. We really are a pair. I might not even be able to defeat a spirit chi professional with a silver power smiled brightly. I don't know what my father is thinking this year. Anyway, I'll go back and tell my father that I was tricked by you when I first came out with you. It will be embarrassing enough for father and daughter to beat you up. Even if I have a Uncle Lee was dumbfounded when he heard Auntie Zhang's words. It doesn't have the ability to attack. His expression was like and it will be beaten out in an instant. Aunt Zhang chuckled. I have always wanted to find a stable and reliable team, of my father, but I can't find a suitable one. Punish you again. It's too difficult for me. He wouldn't be able to take it if you left for another chatterbox and told Lin Yuan about his worries. Aunt Zhang's words made Uncle Lee even more embarrassed. Lin Yuan listened to Gao Feng's words and said, I don't need a silver power offense type. Little Yuan is now a creation master. Gao Feng's contracted phase when I go back, I will ask my father if he can take a look at Little Yuan's talent and accept him as a disciple. They didn't have attack abilities and weren't good at attacking. Their plant bodies were also very weak. If there's a difference in seniority, if such a way of contracting phase was in a stable team, and if the other team members who were strong enough individually, come to QQ to support the original version. If such a method of contracting phase was used in a stable team, and if the other team members were individually strong enough, Gao Feng would be a god-class support.
Chapter 247.
If the teammates were not
When you
strong
had been
enough
paying
and the
attention
teammates
to
carried
Lin
Gao
Yuan's
Feng,
expression
it
when
would
he
be
had
the
answered
same
the
as
phone
4
just
against
now.
5. Upon
This
seeing
was
that
because
Lin
Gao
Yuan
Feng's
had
role
hung up
was
the
only to
phone,
make a
when
strong
you
team
handed over a
stronger.
cup of freshly brewed
In a
spirit
weak
tea,
team, even if Gao
young
Feng
master,
enhanced his teammates,
I feel like you're a lot
helped his
happier
teammates,
after the
and
call.
the friendly phase on the
Lin
battlefield
Yuan
to recover
replied with a
spirit
laugh.
power, protected the core
Yes,
phase,
I can
and
finally
increased
put my
the tolerance
worries
to
to rest.
mistakes. It still wouldn't
Apart
be of
from
any
increasing
decisive
his
use.
strength,
Lin Yuan had
however,
been thinking
it
about
still
Auntie
wouldn't be
Zhang
of any
and Uncle Wang
decisive
the
use.
most. If
As
he
for
wasn't
Chu
strong
Xiai,
enough, he
Cold
would
Moon
still
had
be
already
beaten up.
arrived in Redbud City,
In Lin
so
Yuan's
he had
opinion,
nothing to worry
Gao
about.
Feng was indeed too
During
difficult.
this period of time,
When
he
Gao
could feel
Feng
how
heard
hard
Lin
she had been
Yuan's words,
studying and
he was
training during the
immediately
phone call.
flabbergasted. Besides
According
pride,
to normal
Lin Yuan
operations,
also felt a
shouldn't
little
Lin
sorry
Yuan
for
be
her for
consoling
working
himself
so
at this
hard to
moment?
improve her strength. Why isn't he playing
However,
by the rules?
Lin Yuan blamed himself
In
more,
less than 2
feeling
hours,
that he seemed
the
to
4
have raised a
infant
good
elemental
sister
shellfish
astray.
that were still in hibernation
Although he
were
never paid
transported
attention
from
to
Wind
his
Mist
own
City's
information
Gao
on
family
Star
to
Web,
Lin Yuan's
he was
hands.
very concerned about Chu
Gao
Xi's
Feng looked
information.
at the 4 infant elemental
Not long
shellfish
ago,
that weren't
Chu
even as big
Xiai
as
had
the
also
amber
started
buttons on
fighting
Lin
in the
Yuan's
Star
sleeves.
Tower.
Once these 4
terrifying
elemental
talent and the
shellfish are awakened from their hibernation by
iron
spirit
wild
chi,
bull
if
naturally
there isn't a
attracted
high
most people's
concentration
attention.
spirit chi environment for
Some
them to
Star Web
survive within
columnists
5
were
minutes,
even writing
the elemental
articles about
shellfish
Chu
will
Xiai.
immediately die. Everything else
Gao
was
Feng
fine,
was very
but Chu
serious when he
Xiai
said
actually
this.
had a very mighty and
What Gao
domineering
Feng
title on
said was
Star
a
Web.
bloody lesson that the Gao
Iron
family
Bull
had
Knight.
learned after losing a few infant
It wouldn't
elemental
be a bad
shellfish
title
when
for
they
a
were
man,
nurturing the
but
elemental
Chu Xiai was a
shellfish.
girl. If
It
Gao
was a
Feng
little
didn't
too
treat
much to
Lin
give her
Yuan
such
as
a
a friend,
title.
he wouldn't have said
Some
such
time
words.
ago,
when Chu Xiai had been on the phone with Lin Yuan, she had mentioned that she
Yuan
wanted to learn a
immediately
hobby
stored the
after
4
school.
elemental shellfish into
Lin
the
Yuan
spirit lock
naturally
spatial
raised
zone.
both hands in approval.
With the high concentration
it was
spirit
rather
chi
good
in
to
the
learn a
spirit
hobby
lock
outside
spatial
of school.
zone.
The 4 infant
However,
elemental
when
shellfish
Lin
would
Yuan
immediately
found out
awaken
that
from
she
their
wanted to learn
hibernation and
boxing,
absorb a
he
large
could not
amount of
help
high
but
purity
sigh.
spirit chi. Lin Yuan felt
Lin
as
Yuan
though he was
planned
about
to
to
split
mutate 2
open.
elemental shellfish
In
into
the end,
aquamarine
after
elemental
Lin Yuan
shellfish
tried his
and
best
2
to persuade her,
Celestine elemental
she finally
shellfish.
changed her idea of
Then,
learning boxing
he would
techniques
stop the
to learning
elemental
fencing.
shellfish's grade at elite
Lin Yuan just wanted to hold his forehead with his hands.
Did I
the
raise my
elemental
sister
shellfish
astray,
were to evolve
or
to
is she
bronze,
already so
they would
crooked that I
evolve into
can't pull
another
her back?
shellfish Fae, the
If he
exploding
was given
pearl
another
shellfish.
chance, he would never
When
let
they
her
evolved
contract
to
the
bronze,
obsidian
the
iron
exploding
wild bull
pearl
again.
shellfish would enhance their
However,
offensive capabilities.
he was more at ease with Chu
The
Xiai
elemental
learning
pearls
the Baroque
produced
sword.
by the bronze exploding
Learning
pearl
foil
shellfish
sword
would
was
become
much
bombs
better
that
than
contained
Zhang Xiao
elemental
by learning
energy,
Yen Yi
and
in
other
every
Faes wouldn't
aspect.
be able to perfectly absorb
He could
them.
not help but sigh. If that was the case,
Next year,
Lin Yuan
he
would
could
be at a
consider
huge
letting her
loss.
contract a 3rd Fae.
After Gao Feng completed
Lin
the
Yuan might have a
transaction with
direction
Lin
for the
Yuan,
3rd Fae,
he asked for
but
Lin
he didn't have
Yuan's
a clear
private
choice.
communication software
But
and added
now,
each other
Lin
as
Yuan
friends.
would probably have to add
Before
a new
leaving,
standard to his
Gao
choice.
Feng suddenly said, "Apart from being
Brother,
powerful,
you have
the
so
3rd
many
Fae she
completely
chose to
jade
contract
textured with
must
spirit
also be
materials.
good-looking. I
If the
wonder if you have
obsidian
any
iron
surplus
wild
you want
bull
to sell."
savagery was worth 10,000
Upon hearing
points.
that,
Then
Lin
Chu
Yuan
Xi's
replied,
newly contracted 3rd Fae
"I have a
would
lot of
definitely pull
completely
it down
jade
to 0
textured with
points.
spirit materials here."
Lin Yuan called
If
Gao
you want to
Feng.
trade, we can contact
Lin
each
Yuan's
other on the
phone
phone.
rang
Until it ended before
When
Gao
Gao
Feng
Feng
picked
heard
it up,
this,
he was overjoyed. Lin
Gao
Yuan could
Feng
only
could
hear
not
that
help
Gao
but
Feng's
think that if he
voice
could
was
get a lot of
hoarse,
jade-textured
as though
wood
he
from
had
Lin
just
Yuan,
woken up and
his
was in
old
a daze.
fogies would be so happy.
It was just that his tone
This was
wasn't
because
very
to
good.
the rich and powerful,
Who is
having
it?
furniture or ornaments made of
sleeping.
completely jade-textured
I'll
wood
call you
placed
when
in
I
their
wake
homes
up.
represented their heritage
Lin
and
Yuan
prestige.
raised his brows. After Gao Feng
It
left,
seemed that Gao
Lin Yuan
Feng
still
still
had
had
the
the
mood to wake up. It was already
You
dusk.
don't want bronze/epic
He left
support
his
type
mansion
plant
and
phase
headed in the
anymore.
direction of the Radiant Moon
As
Palace.
soon as Lin Yuan said that,
After
he
visiting
quickly
his
put
master,
the phone 10
the Moon
centimeters
Empress,
away from his
Lin
ear.
Yuan couldn't wait to go out
Lin
and
Yuan
train.
heard Gao Feng yelling on the
Baidu,
other end of the
read
phone.
the latest chapter of
Brother,
Beast
I've
Evolution
been
Merchant
waiting for
Claw
your call.
Bookhouse for free. Lin Yuan felt that Gao Feng also had the talent of changing faces
Chapter
in Sichuan
254.
opera. Previously,
When Lin Yuan
you said
arrived
that you
at the
wanted a
leading
support
mountain,
type plant
he
Fae with a
happened to see
stronger
Jin
attack.
Qi, who was wearing a I
light
wonder
yellow
if there are
spirit
any
attendant
specific
robe,
choices.
tidying up the dead branches
Gao
that
Feng
some
was
plant
no longer
phase had
sleepy
shed
on
on
the
the
other
other
end
end
of
of
the
the
phone.
When
In
Jin
fact,
Qi saw
as
Lin
soon as
Yuan,
he heard Lin
she
Yuan
quickly
mention
bowed
broad
and
and
greeted,
epic
"Greetings,
Lord
Lord
Lin
Feng had been
Yuan."
completely awake.
Then, he hurriedly
Especially
went to
after
other
hearing
places to
Lin
clean up
Yuan
the
say
environment
that,
of the
Gao
Leaning
Feng's
Moon
heart
Mountain.
violently jumped, and his
Jin
pupils
Qi did not know
contracted.
why, but when she
As
saw
a
Lin
core
Yuan
member
now,
of the Radiance
she no longer
Federation's
had the
32
same
major
thoughts as
cities,
before.
Wind Mist City's
There was
richest
only
Gao
awe
family.
and fear.
Gao Feng's ability to
Ever
listen and
since when you were
distinguish sounds
chosen
was
as her
simply too
assistant,
strong.
Jin Qi had been living
Lin
in
Yuan's
fear.
question was tantamount
He
to
was
saying
always
that he could
afraid that
choose
when you
any
would find
support
fault
type
with
plant
him,
Fey with offensive power
even
that
Lin
he
Yuan
wanted.
would help when you deal with
The
him.
meaning of the statement was
Jin
self-evident.
Qi now understood that even
Only
when you
a
could
person
deprive
with
her
at
of
least
her
a qualification as a
qualification
spirit
master
attendant
backing
would
him
just
would
have the
word,
confidence
let
to
alone
say
Lin
such
Yuan.
words. The Radiant Moon
Even a
Palace's
class
young
4
lord.
creation master would
Lin
find it difficult to nurture a bronze/epic palace, did not know
However,
Qin-Chi's
the
thoughts.
words that came out of Lin Yuan's mouth were as simple as
he would
asking
definitely
if he had
think
eaten.
that if a person was suffering
Even
from
with the wealth of the
persecutory
wind
delusions,
mist city's
they would
family,
need to be treated
they
quickly.
definitely did not have the confidence
Of course,
to say
if
such
a person
words.
did not do anything wrong,
all the cells
it would
in
be
Gao
difficult
Feng's
for him
body
to
were
suffer
telling
from
Gao
a mental
Feng
illness
that it was
such
time
as
to suck up to
persecutory
him.
delusion.
It was
When
just
Lin
that
Yuan
Gao Feng
arrived
was
at
a
the
little
Radiant Moon
embarrassed and
Palace's
stuttered.
entrance, he saw
Brother,
his master,
can I change
the
the
moon
support
empress,
type plant
holding
phase
an
that
emerald green
focus on
bottle that
attacking
contained a
support
light
type
purple
phase
spirit
that focus
liquid.
on support type phase?
As the moon empress wrist
Those
shook,
that can help
the
people
pale
recover
purple
spiritual
fluid
power.
churned.
When Gao
Lin
Feng
Yuan
spoke,
felt as though
he was
ancient
very
trees
careful.
that pierced through the clouds
He
had
was
appeared in front
obviously
of him.
afraid that if he suddenly
The
changed
ancient
his
tree
mind,
contained
Lin
a
Yuan
majestic
would have
life
a bad
force.
opinion of him.
This life
When
force
trading
seemed
for
to be able to
bronze/epic
lift up the
phase,
heavens.
it was not a good
The
thing
moon
to
empress
suddenly change
circulated
the
her
type
spirit
of power,
power/epic
and the spirit
phase after
liquid in the
making
bottle
an
turned
agreement.
into 2 wisps of
Lin
purple
Yuan
gas
was
that
a
wound
little
around the
surprised.
2 diamond/legend
What
silver
had Gao
stamen
Feng
gold luster
experienced
during
during
the
the
past
few
few
days?
days? Radiant Moon Palace. What made a support
The
that
2
only
diamonds
focused on dealing
legend
damage
silver
become a
stamen
support
gold
that
luster
only focused on
absorbed
supporting
the
the 2 wisps of
The
fake purple
change was
spirit
simply
chi.
too great.
One of the
Lin
branches and
Yuan's
leaves
fey
became more
affinity was
luxuriant,
inclined toward
while the
healing
other
and
seemed to
support
wither
type
in an
phase that did
instant.
not have any offensive means.
All of the leaves, including
However,
the remaining
Lin
flowers
Yuan
of the
had
silver
always been
stamen
inclined
gold
toward
luster
output
cassia
when it came to
turned into
enhancing his
ashes in an
phase.
instant.
However,
The moon
when it
empress
came to
had already
output,
noticed
Lin
Lin
Yuan's
Yuan's
arrival
control,
and waved at
defense,
him.
and healing were all
Let's
very
go.
comprehensive. Follow me to the back of the palace. He would not let himself
This
have an
silver
obvious
stamen
shortcoming.
gold luster cassia has lived
However,
up to
in
expectations.
just a few days, Gao
When
Feng's
its
thinking
thinking
had
had
changed
it will be
faster
promoted
than an
to
old
the
lady
suzerain
spraining
tier.
her waist. I didn't waste
However,
the suzerain
Lin
tier
Yuan
blood
did not
wood,
have any
the freedom
objections to
canopy,
Gao Feng's
and the
change of
holy river
choice.
to concoct this spiritual
He said,
liquid.
Then,
Among the
he was
support type
currently
plant
using
phase
true
that
data
has support
to
type
observe the
abilities
2
that can
silver
recover
stamen gold
spiritual
luster
power.
cashes
Do you
in
have
front
any
of the
better
Radiant Moon
choices?
Palace.
Gao Feng's
The withered
eyes lit
silver
up.
stamen gold luster
Lin
cassia
Yuan's
had
words
obviously
meant that there was a
comprehended
way.
willpower rune and was
Brother,
accumulating
do you have any
energy to advance to the
bronze/epic
suzerain
spirit
tier.
spring lilies? When Lin Yuan heard the words
After
spirit
reaching
spring
suzerain,
lily,
if it
he
could
said,
withstand
a
the world
bronze/epic
cleansing, it would
spirit
become a
spring
myth-breed
lily is not
fae.
cheap. As for
A
the other
bronze/epic
silver-stamen gold
spirit
luster
spring
cassia,
lily isn't cheap.
although its growth looked gratifying,
An ordinary
it actually had a
bronze/normal
tree full of
spirit
flower
spring
buds
lilies
in late
price
autumn.
is already comparable to
But
an
in
ordinary
essence,
gold
there
fae.
wasn't much improvement.
Furthermore, the
At that
requirement
moment,
for the spirit
Lin
spring
Yuan
lily's
felt his
quality
spirit
advancement is
jolt, and a
extremely
feeling of
high.
enlightenment surged in his
Even
heart.
pinnacle class 4
He
creation
felt that this
masters will
feeling
have
of
a certain
enlightenment was
difficulty
still a
and
little
might
lacking.
fail.
As long
Therefore,
as that
you should
strand was
understand the
broken,
price.
he would be able to
Gao
comprehend
Feng
another
chuckled
willpower
and
rune.
said,
Don't worry,
The
brother.
moon empress sensed Lin
Brother,
Yuan's change
don't
and
worry.
smiled.
As long
Gao
as I have
Feng,
an
never
understanding
lack
of
money.
the world, obtaining a
However,
willpower rune
brother,
is only a
can I
matter
have
of
3
time.
bronze/epic
I don't
spirit
have to
spring
worry
lilies?
too much about the understanding
Lin
in my
Yuan
mind and
smacked
just
his
let
lips
nature
when he
take
heard
its
that.
course. Young
Lin
man,
Yuan
you're
nodded.
quite arrogant. Lin Yuan had
3
always been
bronze/epic
open-minded,
spirit
so he wouldn't
spring
worry
lilies
too
were
much
much
about the
rarer than the
willpower
3
rune he hadn't
bronze/epic
comprehended
flame
and the dragonflies that had awakened the Silurian overlord.
This
huge
feeling of
vein
being
dragonfly
just a little short of
bloodline that he had
enlightenment
traded
was a
with the
little like a
lightning
person
sparrow
wanting
king
to
previously,
sneeze,
but being stuck and almost
Therefore,
unable to
in
sneeze.
terms of price, the standard
After
was
entering the
naturally
Radiant
higher.
Moon Palace's main hall,
Lin Yuan's bottom
had a
line was at
question
least
and answer
10 source type
exercise with the
items.
Moon Empress. Moreover,
This
there must
question
be
and
2
answer
source type
exercise
items
went
that
on
were
for a long
relatively
time.
easy to contract and were
It
in
was
high
mainly
demand
because
before
during
Lin
this
Yuan
period
would
of
choose
time,
to trade.
as Lin Yuan's strength
When
got
Gao
stronger
Feng saw
and he
that
came
Lin
into
Yuan
contact
did
with
not
more
speak
things,
for a long
he
time,
could increasingly
he
feel
carefully
his
probed.
shallowness.
However,
Can I trade
the
with the
question and
island
answer
whale?
exercise with the Moon
Upon
Empress
hearing the
perfectly
words
made up
island
for his
whale,
shallowness.
Lin Yuan made a prompt decision.
As long as Lin Yuan asked the
Sure.
Moon Empress about all his
Lin
doubts,
Yuan had
a
not
few words
expected
from
that
the Moon
someone would be
Empress
willing to
allow
trade
Lin
the
Yuan
island
to have a
whale,
thorough
even if it was
understanding of
3
the previous
bronze/epic
problems.
spirit spring lilies.
At the same time, the
In a
Moon
sense,
Empress questions
the
were
island
also
whale's
a preciousness
preciousness
for
was
Lin
not
Yuan to
inferior to a
consolidate.
bronze/legend fae
This
that had
question
yet
and
to
answer
appear on the
exercise
market.
had resolved many of Lin
Baidu,
Yuan's doubts.
read the latest chapter of the
This
Beast
feeling of
Evolution
benefiting
Merchant
greatly
Claw
made Lin
Bookhouse
Yuan
for
feel
free.
very comfortable. Lin Yuan told the Moon Empress about his
Chapter
idea
of going out to train. The island whale's preciousness wasn't because of how powerful it was, but because of the strategic significance of phase like the island whale. The Moon Empress knew Lin Yuan's current strength. The ocean had become a forbidden place for humans. She was very surprised when she found out, but she had never taken the ocean had become as dangerous as the deep sea. In the Moon Empress opinion, fays living in the ocean had the professional should have their own opportunities after reaching platinum. As Lin Yuan's master, phase relied on spraying high-pressure water into the sky and even set off 100-meter tall waves. Progress. There were also some marine phase that could temporarily for not helping Lin Yuan enough to launch attacks. However, this was also the reason why only a handful of human powerhouses were able to set foot in the ocean. Self-reliance and self-improvement. The world's territory was huge, without such character and perseverance. How could he have the
However,
possibility
the
of
ocean
becoming a true
separated them,
expert? And there were few opportunities to communicate. After Lin Yuan finished speaking,
a magical life
his
form,
master,
had
the
become a
moon
way
empress.
for humans to set foot in the ocean,
and
I
it was
plan to
absolutely
participate
safe
in the
at that
Radiance
time.
100 sequence selection
The
after I
island
come
whale
back
was
from the
a very
training.
magical life form and
Then,
couldn't be
Lin
considered
Yuan
a
told
life
the moon
form in the
empress
ordinary
about the
sense.
process he had gone through to
This was
participate
because
in
the
the
birth of
Radiance
the
100
island
sequence
whale
selection.
didn't come from the island whale's
Although
mother's
the moon
womb,
empress
but from a
already
large
knew
whale
about it,
fall in the
she
depths
didn't
of the
stop it
ocean.
and listen quietly.
The phenomenon of a
From the
whale
moon
sinking to
empress
the
point
bottom
of
of the
view,
ocean
it
after
was
its
the
death
happiest
was called
thing
a
for a
whale
teacher
fall.
when her own disciple
A
told her
whale's
about his
carcass could
achievements.
support a set of seabed
At night,
ecosystems for
Lin
nearly
Yuan stayed for
1,000
dinner
years.
at the Radiant Moon Palace.
Only a place where thousands
Before
of
leaving the
magnificent
Radiant
cetacean
Moon
mountains
beasts,
died
the moon
together
empress
could be
stopped
called a
Lin
large
Yuan
whale
and handed
fall.
him a very ordinary-looking
A whale
wooden
fall
token
was
that
the
was
world's
carved with the
magnificent
crescent moon.
beast's last gentleness
The
to the
first
ocean.
and last crescent moons
When a
seemed to
whale
be
fell,
rotating
all
non-stop,
living things were
and
born.
each rotation lasted for
When
a month.
tens of thousands of whales
Lin
fell,
Yuan looked
the
at the
island
wooden
whale
sign in
appeared.
confusion.
In the depths
The
of
moon
the
empress
ocean,
stepped
after a
forward and
large
said,
whale fall, the
"This
whale's
is a
carcass
source
would be
type item
completely
called the
decomposed by
token.
deep-sea life forms after
My
nearly
fae,
10,000
cold moon
years.
lone disk's moonlight
A
domain
few
is
gem-like
sealed
eggs would
inside.
be left behind in the deep
It can
sea
be
after
used
this
as a
huge
trump
whale
card
to
to protect
protect
yourself apart from the
These
mother of
eggs would
bloodbath.
nurture the island whale.
When the moon empress said
It
this,
could be seen
there
what
was
a rare
faint
fae
smile
the
on her
island
face.
whale was and what an important
Although the
strategic
moon empress
resource
had
it
found the
was.
mother of bloodbath as
Due
a
to the
path
praise of the
protector,
miracle
it
of
could
life,
be said to be
the
a
whale
perfect
fall,
plan.
all the life forms in
However,
the ocean
as
wouldn't
a
attack
teacher,
the island
how
whale.
could he truly be at ease
The
when it came
unborn
to the
island
safety of
whale
his
would sleep
disciple?
in the gem-like eggshell
Lin
that
Yuan
appeared after the
suddenly
whale
felt
fall.
his eyes dry up as he looked
After
at this very
absorbing
enough
enough
spirit-looking
spirit
source type
the
extreme
island
token.
whale would automatically hatch.
Lin Yuan could feel a kind
Before
of love
reaching the
from the
peak of
depths of the
diamond
soul.
and becoming a fantasy breed.
This was a
the
kind of
island whale's
selfless
body
love
would
for the
only be
best.
over 10 meters long.
The moon
which
empress
was not
looked at
comparable
Lin
to
Yuan
ordinary
and reached out to help him
phase.
tidy up the collar of
However,
his clothes.
when the island whale reached
Disciple,
the peak of diamond
since you've
and
chosen
became
to
a
go on
fantasy
your own,
breed,
you
it
can
would
try to
become a
establish a
suzerain.
faction that belongs to
The
you.
island whale's body was
The
so
Radiance
big that it looked
Federation
like
is
an
peaceful
island
and
sheltered
happy
by the
because it
ocean
is
on a
strong
turbulent
enough,
sea,
and no one dares to invade
After
it.
reaching the suzerain tier,
However,
the
the world
stronger the
outside
island
the
whale
Radiance
was,
Federation
the
is a
larger its
mixture of
island
good
would
and
be.
evil.
Sooner or later,
It could be
it
said
will be
that
a
the
world
island
you will have
whale
to
was the
explore.
only option for humans
Remember,
to venture into
no
the
matter
ocean.
what, I will always be
A
your
fae like
strongest
the
support.
island whale could no longer
With
be
me
treated
around,
as a fae.
no matter what you do.
This was
Even if you
because
poke
every
a hole in the
suzerain
sky,
island whale
no
was
one
a
in this
powerful
world can touch
foundation
you.
that could deter other large
When she
forces
said this,
in the world.
two crescent moons seemed
Lin
to form
Yuan
in the
did not
moon
expect
empress
that Gao
eyes,
Feng would
constantly
actually
choose
condensing
to
and
exchange an
disappearing.
island whale for 3
Baidu,
epic spirit
read
spring
the latest
lilies.
chapter of Beast
Although
Evolution
the value
Merchant
of
Claw
3
Book
bronze
House
/
Epic
free.
Spirit Spring Lilies was roughly comparable to that of an island whale, it was not worth much. Chapter
But
255.
in terms of significance, it was completely
Finally, the
incomparable.
moon empress waved her hand
This
and
was
said in a
because
warm
the 3
voice,
bronze
"Go.
/ epic spirit spring
I'll cook
lilies
something
could be
delicious
replaced
for
by
you
other
when you come
bronze
back."
/ epic phase.
It was already late
However,
at night when
it
Lin
was
Yuan
impossible
went down
to
the
set
leaning
foot in the
mountain
sea without the island whale.
The cold autumn wind
Lin
blew
Yuan
on Lin
didn't
Yuan's
know if
body,
he should say that
giving
he
him
was
an
lucky or
indescribable
that Gao
feeling.
Feng was really a prodigal.
This feeling was ambition
When
and
Gao
lofty
Feng heard
sentiments.
that Lin Yuan agreed so
In Lin
quickly,
Yuan's
he was
opinion,
delighted
a
in his
man
heart,
should be
but he
upright and
quickly said,
broad-minded. It's not a big deal.
Even if he did not go through the
Brother,
life and death
although I'm
tribulation
trading with
and
you
sweep
for an
away the
island whale
turbidity
that
of the
has yet to
universe,
develop
he should at
intelligence
least
in a
take revenge
gemstone
while he was
eggshells.
young.
This island whale may
Lin
be a
Yuan
little
no
special.
longer had too much pressure
Upon
from the
hearing
outside
that,
world,
Lin
whether
Yuan
it was to
became solemn.
survive or improve his strength.
How is it special?
Even if there was
Gao
pressure
Feng
in terms of
smiled
strength,
bitterly and
it was
said,
given by
"I don't
Lin
know how
Yuan
special
himself.
it is."
Lin
I'll
Yuan
bring it
could
over
be
for
said
you
to
to
be a
take a
young
look
hero
before you
for having
decide
such
if you want
strength
to
at
trade
the
or
age of
not.
18. If you don't
When he
trade for
heard
the
the moon
island
empress
whale,
words
I'll
just
use
now,
source type
Lin
items or
Yuan
precious
suddenly had the
spiritual
idea of
ingredients to
forming a
trade with
private
you.
faction.
I definitely
Although
won't
Lin
let you
Yuan
suffer
had
a
the
loss.
idea of forming a guild club
When
before,
Gao Feng said
it could
this,
not be
he
considered
began
a
to
private
think about how
faction.
many source type items he
However,
should prepare
a
to
guild
bring
with
over
the nature
first.
of a club couldn't be
Gao
considered a
Feng
private
also
force.
wanted to make 2 preparations.
Especially now that Lin Yuan
This
had the
island
floating
whale that
island
had yet
whale,
to hatch was
which could
too
be
called a strategic resource of
It
the
was
world.
so special that the Gao family had no way to completely
establish a private
The Gao
faction of his
family
own
provided
on the
for a
floating
Class
island
4
whale's
creation
back.
master.
When the floating
However,
island whale
this
grew
Class
up,
4
it would
creation
be like a
master had
giant
just become
beast
a
with
Class
a floating
4,
city on
so
its
it was
back.
still very difficult for him
The
to
floating
enhance a
island
bronze
whale
slash
could
epic
carry the
fae.
city on its back on the
However,
surface of the
the
sea,
Class 4
but it could
creation
also
master
carry the
still
city
had
on
the
its back
eyesight.
and float in the clouds.
With the Class 4
If he
creation
built a
master's
faction on the
confirmation,
back of the
this
floating
island whale
that was still
which
in the
could be called a
gemstone eggshell
strategic
had
resource
mutated.
of the world, then Lin
However,
Yuan's
the
faction
island
could go
whale was
anywhere in
rare,
this big
and
world.
even the Class 4 creation
It could be
master
said
could
that the
only
floating
see that it had
island whale
mutated.
was the foundation of Lin
However,
Yuan's private
there was
faction.
no research on what exactly
However,
had happened to
how
the
many
mutated
resources
island
would be
whale.
consumed to form such
This
a
was
huge
also
private
why Gao
faction.
Feng was able to control this
Therefore,
island whale.
the collection of resources
Otherwise,
had become the
even
primary
if Gao
problem
Feng
Lin
was the
Yuan
only
had to
direct
face.
descendant of Wind Mist City's Gao
Previously,
family,
Lin Yuan
he
had
definitely
also started
wouldn't be
to collect
qualified to
source
take
type
out
items.
such a fae that symbolized
He
the
did not
foundation
care
to
if they were
trade.
useful to himself or
Lin
his
Yuan
friends.
didn't care much. He only treated
when
these
Gao
source
Feng
type
took out
items
this
as a kind of
whale,
strategic
he
material.
would use true data to see
But
where it
now
had
that Lin
mutated
Yuan
and
had
whether he
plans
was
to establish
trade.
his own private faction,
Lin Yuan
the
and
speed
Gao
of Feng
Feng
had
had agreed
strategic
to meet at
resources
3
was
p.m.,
obviously
so there
only
was
a
still a
drop in
few
the bucket.
hours.
Suddenly, Lin Yuan's thought of Gao
Lin
Feng's
Yuan had
reaction
already
when he
started
saw the
to
furniture
purchase
made of
spirit
complete
spring
lilies
from the
textured
Star
wood.
Web's rare life form
As a core
pavilion
member
and
of
began to
Wind
enhance
City's
them.
Gao family,
In
Gao
the inner
Feng
palace
still
of the
loved
Leaning
and cherished
Moon
this
Mountains
completely
radiant moon
jade-textured
palace.
wood.
Xian
It could
Yu
be
looked
seen
at
that
the
this
proud but
completely
somewhat worried
jade-textured
Moon
would have
Empress
a vast
and couldn't
market
help but
among the
say,
rich and powerful families.
Moon Empress,
young
it
lord
wasn't
didn't
that
look for you to
completely
write the
jade-textured
recommendation
wood was
letter.
so rare that it couldn't be found.
Instead, he used the Celestial Stairway title that he
On the
obtained from the
contrary,
Celestial Stairway to obtain the
wood was much
qualification
more
to
common
compete
than
for
some
the
truly
Radiant's
precious
precious
spiritual
materials and phase.
You should be happy.
However,
The
such a
Moon Empress
situation
looked
had
at
occurred
Mystic
because
Moon
this
with
completely
melancholy and
jade-textured wood was crazily
This
sought after by
consort's
people with
disciple is
status in the
naturally
Radiance
outstanding,
Federation,
but this
and the
consort's
market was
disciple
simply
is
too
vast.
vast. Independent. As long as
This
completely
makes me,
jade-textured wood appeared on the
feel
market,
like I haven't
it
been
would
of any
immediately
help in
be
his path
snatched
of
up by
growth.
the big families.
Xian Yu wanted to
Wealthy
say something,
families would never
but she
let
didn't
go of
say
the
it out
opportunity
loud.
to buy completely
Instead,
jade-textured wood.
she kept it in her heart.
No matter how much jade-textured wood there
was
never a flower
as long
in a
as he could
greenhouse,
afford it,
but
he
a
would
hero
buy it
who
and
faced
store it.
difficulties head-on and
This was
opened up a
because the
path of his
ornaments
own
and
with his
furniture
own
made of
strength.
jade-textured wood,
Even if
Yuan
they were
sought
just
the
small
Moon
ornaments,
Empress help for
represented
everything,
the
it
heritage
would
and
prove
face
that the
of a
Moon
wealthy
Empress had
family
made
to
a
a
mistake
certain
when
extent.
choosing her disciple.
Lin Yuan's
The Moon
spirit lock
Empress
special
felt that the
zone was
spirit
now
tea
80
in her
square
mouth
meters
wasn't
in
fragrant
size,
no matter how
and it
she
did not
tasted
look
it.
small. She couldn't
Apart
help
from
but
the
recall
area
what Chef
occupied by
Supreme
the
had
spirit
said when she
pool
was
and the
talking
pure
about
land of
disciples
bliss.
with him. There was still more than
I'm
half
so
of the
envious
spirit
that
lock
you have
spatial
such a
zone
good
that could be
disciple.
set up.
You can be
However,
so worry-free.
Lin Yuan had never done detailed
thought of
planning
this,
and
the
integration
Moon
of the
Empress
empty
was so
spaces in
angry
the
that she
spirit
stood
lock
up and
spatial
asked
zone.
Mystic Moon.
Chef
Therefore,
Supreme said
there
that
was
he
still
envious
plenty
of
of empty
Empress's
spaces
ease.
in the spirit lock
You
spatial
said
zone
that Chef
could be
Supreme
used again.
envies me for being so relaxed.
Moreover, more than half of the
Is he
large
mocking
batch
me
of
for
wood
not
that
being
Lin
a good
Yuan
master?
had stored in the spirit lock
Xian
spatial
Yu
zone
broke out
had
in
been
a
used
cold
up
sweat
after
and
building
said
the red
carefully,
sandalwood
Chef
longevity
Supreme
fish
probably
tank
doesn't
and
mean
some
that.
jade-textured furniture.
Xian Yu really couldn't
Therefore,
help but want
Lin
to
Yuan
curse in her
planned
heart.
to store more precious wood
Chef
in the
Supreme
spirit lock
must really
spatial
be
zone.
envious of the Moon Empress.
At the same time, he would
Chef
place
Supreme
some
was a
phase
Class
that would
5
transform
creation
an
master
environment
with a
lifetime
lifetime
of
spirit
fame,
chi
but his three
concentration in the
disciples
spirit
were
lock
really
spatial
worry-free.
zone.
As
Chef
for those
Supreme was a
spiritual
Class 5
materials that could
creation
transform
master
with
with
an
an
illustrious
illustrious reputation,
reputation,
but each of his three
Lin
disciples
Yuan
was
did not
truly
plan to
worrisome.
place them in the spirit lock
It was
spatial
said that
zone
the
anymore.
eldest disciple wasn't good at
Firstly,
combat,
it
but
was
he
too
was very
troublesome
talented
for Lin
as a
Yuan to
creation
collect
master.
those spiritual materials
However,
that could
his
transform in
path
the
was in
Star Web's
conflict
rare
with the
life
creation
form
master's
pavilion.
path that Chef Supreme
Secondly,
had taught him.
it was because those
In the
spiritual
end,
materials
the
that could
eldest disciple
transform in an
insisted on his
extremely
own
high
path
spirit
and
chi
left Chef
concentration
Supreme
might
to
have a
prove
longer
that the path he
transformation
took was
period
right.
than completely jade-textured
He even
wood.
abducted Chef Supreme's
Moreover,
only
the
biological
purchase
daughter.
price was much higher than
The
those
second
ordinary
disciple
wood
was
that could
also an
produce
oddball.
completely jade-textured wood
When
under
he
a
was a
large amount
creation
of
master,
spirit chi
it was
concentration
unknown
in the
what was
spirit
wrong with
lock
his
spatial
brain.
zone.
He immediately
Finally,
went into
these
the sea to
spiritual
do
materials
business
that
could
could
transform
transform
in
in
an
an
extremely
extremely
high
high spirit chi
Chef
concentration were
Supreme's
not
second
only not as
disciple
wide
was
as
really good
completely
at doing
jade-textured
business.
wood in the market. He used his
They might
master's
not
name
even
to
be
open
as
a
good as
restaurant.
completely jade-textured wood in terms of price.
It made the entire Radiance
After
Federation
all,
think that the
completely
spirit
jade-textured
food
wood
pavilion
not
was
only
opened
had
by
actual
Chef Supreme
value,
himself,
but it also had the additional
the third
value of
disciple was
symbolizing
Chef Supreme's
foundation and
disciple
faith.
in recent years.
After Lin Yuan
He was
made
very
full use of
outstanding
the
as a
empty
creation
spaces in the
master and
spirit lock
spirit chi
spatial zone,
professional,
but he always liked to go to all kinds of dangerous
These
places.
completely jade-textured
It
rare
was
would
said that Chef
cultivated in the
Supreme
spirit
would go
lock
to
spatial
dangerous
zone
places
and
every
rare
2
phase
or
that would
3 days
transform
because
in
of
his
his
environment
youngest
with a
disciple,
spirit
and
chi
he was so
concentration
scared that
were
he
Lin
had
Yuan's
palpitations.
trump cards and capital to build
Chef
his
Supreme
faction.
arranged a path protector
Since
for
Lin
his
Yuan
youngest
had the
disciple,
idea of
but the
building a
path
faction,
protector was
he
so
also
tortured
had the
by his
method and
youngest
idea
disciple
to
that he had a
accumulate
nervous
resources.
breakdown.
What
Chef
Lin Yuan
Supreme
had
was
to do
already
was
so
to
miserable
miserable
in
in
teaching
teaching
his
his
disciples,
disciples,
so how could he still
then,
have the mood
he
to
would
mock
plan
others?
how to establish his faction's
Wasn't this the
embryonic
same as
form.
comparing who was sweeter
All of
between
this can
tomatoes and
done
sweet
overnight,
potatoes, so Lin Yuan was
At
not
that
in a
moment,
hurry.
Xian Yu heard the
He
Moon
planned to
Empress
first
snort.
consolidate the foundation of the faction's
Chef Supreme
embryonic
must be
form.
mocking this empress.
After all, the
floating
floating island
island
whale
empress
had
sees
not
him.
hatched
I
yet,
will not let
and
him
before
off.
it became a fantasy breed,
Xian Yu
it
didn't
could
dare
not
to
become a
reply
giant
and just
beast that could
silently
support
mourned
a
for
city
Chef
on its
Supreme
back.
for 3 seconds.
When Lin Yuan returned to the
Xian Yu
mansion,
wasn't sure if
he
Chef
saw Wen Yu
Supreme was
carefully
mocking.
folding his clothes one by
However,
one.
when the Moon Empress
She
went to
placed the
settle the
clothes
score
he
with
needed to
Chef
go out on
Supreme,
adventures
every
in a
word she
button-shaped
said
diamond
about her
face
face
storage
was heard
box
by
that
Chef
was very
Supreme.
similar to his source type
That
source
was
sand.
definitely the best way to show off.
Quan, on the other hand, was read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution with a gleaming book house for free. The completely jade-textured peach would showed a kind of agate-like luster. Chapter 249 quickly carved a somewhat decaying peach tree. Lin Yuan had already made plans to go out for training early in the morning. The tree strangely had a kind of dragon-like beauty. He had just set a time for 3 p.m. On the ground at the base of the sculpture. After completing the transaction with Gao from the decaying peach tree, still had to go to the radiant moon palace to meet his master, the Moon Empress, Lin Yuan could not help but sigh. Session before going out for training. Mercury's essence flows upstream in the sky. There were less than 4 hours left before it turns into a blue dragon's in the afternoon. Occasionally, its roots immediately logged into star web and went to the rare life form pavilion to purchase the spirit spring lily that Lin Yuan's had chosen. The carving knife in his hand immediately sped up and carved a support type poem on the base of the peachwood sculpture. Although the spirit spring lily was relatively rare and expensive, for a few days, it was not too difficult to buy in the rare life much better than what I usually see in a year. That was because the spirit spring lily was a pure support type fae, and its demand in the market was not very high. I have a lot of good materials for carving. Did not have the slightest offensive ability or the slightest control ability. Hu Quan's eyes immediately lit up. It was a support-type plant fae that could inject a large amount of even brighter than the eyes of a weasel looking at the strength of their abilities. How can this be considered tiring? When the high-grade spirit spring lily was activated, could be more enjoyable than this? The spirit chi that gushed out of the lily bud was like a gushing and couldn't help showing an expression of admiration. Although the spirit spring lily's support-type ability was extremely strong, an excellent tool who worked tirelessly in the midst of happiness were relatively awkward. When you handed the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box to Lin Yuan and said, spring lily could only rely on their teammates no matter what they did in the future. I've prepared all the resources you'll need for tomorrow's training in this diamond face storage box. Fae was extremely suitable for Star Tower only going to train for a few months. I've prepared 3 years worth of clothing, Spirit Chi professionals who contracted the Spirit Spring Lily would only be suitable for team battles and not for Star Tower duels. Read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Spirit Chi professionals who contracted the Spirit Spring Lily could actually play a role comparable to healing-type Spirit Chi professionals in a team. Chapter 256. In fact, the role of a support-type Spirit Chi professional like diamond face storage box was stronger than that of a healing-type Spirit Chi. He found that there were all kinds of materials placed in different categories in this amber button-shaped for such a willful choice of a fae like the Spirit Spring Lily. Every kind of material was carefully placed in a fixed position in the button-shaped diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan did not understand why Gao for each meal was carefully hibiscus. Obviously, the breeze hibiscus arrangement had taken her a lot of effort. That had the ability to gather this amber button-shaped diamond face storage box had been specially customized by Lin Yuan at Ostrich Logistics affinity direction. It had taken Lin Yuan half a month to get this amber button-shaped diamond face that Gao Feng wanted to contract. This amber button-shaped diamond face storage box was reveal a handsome and confused leaf-shaped and beetle-shaped diamond face storage boxes. Was Gao Feng trying to turn himself into a spirit chi silo on the battlefield? Diamond face storage boxes were the grade of a fae like the spirit spring lily. The more obvious the role it could play in a team. Lin Yuan wore this amber button-shaped diamond face storage box on his cufflink with extremely high requirements for resources. He let the source-type source sand stick to the amber button-shaped face storage box on his cufflink. naturally had the ability to support 3 Spirit When Lin Yuan used the source sand in the future, however, no one would notice that the amber button-shaped object on his cufflink had disappeared for no reason. Lin Yuan was the kind of person who did not like to put his fate in the hands of others to hide his source-type source sand. However, Gao Feng's choice of a contracted at that moment and same as handing his fate to his teammates. Lin Yuan, you just said that there are all kinds of lilies that Lin Yuan had purchased in the Star Web. I wonder if you still take it seriously. Were quickly delivered to him through Ostrich Logistics. Lin Yuan looked at Hu Quan's eager expression and knew that if he did enhancing these completely jade-textured materials to Hu Quan had occurred, he would probably not be able to sleep well tonight. This was because one of the Spirit Spring Lilies had mutated when it was promoted to the bronze rank. Was going to set off for training tomorrow morning and would not be in the mansion during this time. Lin Yuan simply took out the remaining probability of a jade-textured wood in his mutating into a yellow spring lily was simply too low. Hu Quan looked at the completely jade-textured wood that emitted all kinds of colors and could not help but stare with his eyes about to pop out of their sockets. The probability was not much different from when he screamed like a child. Uncle Hu, this yellow spring lily did not manner and how much need to be decorated with these completely jade-textured wood. Lin Yuan would have wanted to keep this yellow spring lily and form a contract with it. When I come back from my training, there was only a trace of spiritual energy left in Lin Yuan's mind, and he could only form a contract with a normal jade-textured wood for his own use in his mansion. Even if Lin Yuan increased some spiritual energy by eating the cinnabar as he would only need to take out an entire piece of jade-textured contract with a few more normal/normal families generally worshipped high-star spiritual energy. Lin
For the
Yuan would rather form a contract with a few more normal phase
only
and
by
nurture
designing
them
it into
slowly.
the shape that the owner wanted.
He was also unwilling to bring out the
contract
best in each other.
bronze yellow spring lily
He no
and
longer had
completely
any completely
spiritual
jade-textured
energy.
wood on hand. Lin Yuan used Morbius' exclusive skill, since he wanted to integrate the space in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. The best use of the space in the Spirit Lock spatial zone was to divide a suitable willpower rune to promote. Not only
to
did he
fantasy
have to
greed.
use flat space,
Therefore,
but he also had to use
been
unable to promote to silver due to the Spirit
Lin
Gather
Yuan
goldfish
asked
and
Quan
blue
to
flash
pull a
purple
few pieces of
butterflies
very
grades.
large
wudong wood and build
As a
two
result,
huge shelves for
Morbius'
himself.
Spirit Lock spatial zone had
Lin
been
Yuan
unable
had
to
designed
open the
these
fourth
wudong wood
Spirit Lock
shelves to be
position.
very wide and thick.
However,
So he could
even
put the
if
whole
Morbius
wooden
reached
board in them
silver
one
and
by
opened
one.
the fourth position of
When
Spirit
Quan
Lock,
was making
Lin
these
Yuan
huge
would
shelves
not
of
let
wudong
Morbius
wood for
Spirit
Lin
Lock
Yuan,
the yellow spring
he was
lily.
still muttering in his heart.
This was because the yellow
Lin
spring
Yuan
lily's
had
ability was not
jade-textured
suitable
wood,
for Morbius'
but he was now
exclusive
using
skill,
ordinary
Spirit
wudong
Lock.
wood that could be bought for tens
The
of
yellow
thousands of
spring lily's
Federation
ability
dollars
was
to make
to
a
use the
shelf.
sacrificial sacrifice
What was the
effect
use of
once in
making the
battle,
shelf so
sacrificing itself?
Hu Quan could not
It would
help but
sacrifice
sigh.
itself to heal the phase
I really
injuries
can't
and restore it
understand
to
the
its
world
peak
of the
state.
rich. After
However,
using
as a
sacrificial
class 4 spirit
sacrifice, the
craftsman,
yellow spring
Hu Quan
lily
had
would enter a
directly
withered
sculpted this
state and
huge
need a
shelf
long
when he
time
was
to
creating
slowly
it.
recover. Each wudong wood was engraved
The
with
phase
phoenix
grade
feathers,
that the yellow
with a
spring lily
phoenix
could recover
cover
had to be
and
lower
wanting
than
to
its
fly
own
perched
grade.
on them.
Therefore,
The wudong
wood
had
had
always been known as the habitat of the phoenix,
had
an
an
intrinsic
intrinsic
conflict
conflict
with
with
the
ancient
yellow
books
spring
and
lily's
records.
sacrificial sacrifice.
The phoenix cries,
Moreover,
on the high hill.
The talents of the people
The
around
wudong
Lin
tree
Yuan were
grows
not
on the
suitable
morning
for forming
sun.
a contract with this
It
yellow
was a kind
spring
of tree
lily
that symbolized light.
Therefore, Lin Yuan
Even though
planned
the
to
shelf
ask
was
Gao
made of
Feng for his
ordinary
opinion
wudong
on
wood,
this yellow
it was
spring
immediately
lily.
made into an
Gao
exquisite
Feng
object
should
by
want
Hu
to form a
Quan.
contract with this yellow
With a
spring
wave of
lily.
his hand, Lin Yuan
The
stored
support
these
effect
two
that a
huge
yellow
shells
spring
into
lily
the
could
Spirit
play could
Lock
directly
spatial zone.
increase a support-type Spirit
Before
Chi
the
professional
Spirit Chi
strategic
awakening,
position
the
in a
Phoenix
team battle
only
and even
existed in
raise it
ancient
above the
books
main
and
output
records,
members,
and it was considered a fictional
this was because
creature.
the yellow spring lily's
However,
ability effect
after the
could
Spirit
greatly
Chi
increase the
awakening,
fault
some
tolerance
powerful
in a team
avian
battle.
phase had evolved with
Many
similarities to
five-man
the
teams
legendary
would often
Phoenix.
revolve around one or two
Take
main
Chimey
phases
for
in a team
example.
battle.
If
The
Lin
Spirit
Yuan
Spring
had seen
Lily's
Chimey
effect
use
was
the
equivalent
radiant
to
body
letting
in
the
his
main
previous
phase in
life,
this team not
he would
die.
probably have recognized
No
Chimey
matter
as
how
a
serious
phoenix
the
when it used
injuries
the
they
radiant
suffered,
body.
they could instantly recover
Since
to
Lin
their
Yuan
peak
was
state.
going out to train tomorrow,
A bronze
he returned to his
yellow
yellow
spring
spring
lily's value was many times
However,
higher than a
he was
bronze
not in a hurry
epic
to
Spirit
sleep.
Spring Lily.
Instead,
He planned to buy a batch of supplies on Star Web
naturally
tonight.
could not calculate the
At
price
the
of the
same time,
bronze
he would
epic
also
yellow
evolve
spring
and
lily
mutate
according
the
to the
four
previously
elemental
agreed
shellfish
price
that
of
were
the
living very
bronze
freely
epic
under the
Spirit
high
Spring
Spirit
Lily.
Chi concentration in the
However,
Spirit Lock
Gao
spatial
Feng
zone.
and the Wind Mist City's
Lin
Gao
Yuan
family
first
behind
entered
him
his
should be
Spirit
willing
Lock
and able to
spatial
afford the
zone
price
and
of
placed
this
these two large
bronze
shells
yellow
made of
spring
wudong
lily.
wood at the edge of the
At
Spirit
the
Lock
same
spatial
time,
zone.
Lin Yuan was also
These
very
two
much
large
looking
shells
forward to the
occupied
abnormal
one-third of
island
the
whale
Spirit
that
Lock
Gao
spatial
Feng would
zone's
bring in a
80
while.
square meter area.
If a fae like the
After
island
tidying
whale
up
was
this
abnormal,
Spirit Lock spatial
there was only
zone,
one
Lin Yuan
possibility.
sorted out
It had
many
mutated.
places that he had not used before.
Lin Yuan could not help but
Then,
look forward
he
to how the
transferred all
mutated
the
island
radiance
whale
dollars
that
in the
Gao Feng
beetle-shaped
had mentioned on
diamond
the
face
phone was
storage
different
box
from a
into his
normal
amber
island whale.
button-shaped diamond face storage
Gao
box.
Feng was willing to use a strategic class resource like the island whale
The
as a bargaining
leaf-shaped
chip to
diamond
exchange
face
with
storage
him.
box was still filled
Given
with
the
all kinds of
foundation of a
dimensional
wealthy
life
family
forms
like the
flesh
Gao
that stretched
family,
as far as
they
the
would
eye
never
could see.
easily take out important
Now,
strategic
Lin
resources.
Yuan's beetle-shaped diamond face
Therefore,
storage
this
box was
mutated
considered
island
empty.
whale must be very problematic.
Lin Yuan planned to use this
It was so
beetle-shaped diamond
problematic
face
that the Gao
storage
family
box as a
felt that
place
this
to store
island
all the
whale was a
supplies he
useless
needed
thing
in the
in
Spirit
Lin
Lock
Yuan's
spatial
hands.
zone in the future.
Not long after
Since
Lin Yuan
finished
wanted to
enhancing
fully
the
utilize the
Spirit
Spirit
Lock
lilies
spatial
and
zone,
obtain
the
two
consumption of energy
bronze
ores was much higher than
and
before.
one bronze/epic
The
yellow
floating
spring
island
lily,
whale
Lin
and the
Yuan's
elemental
cell phone
shellfish
rang.
consumed a lot of pure
Lin Yuan
spiritual
took a
power.
look and saw that it was Gao
Morbius
Feng who was
Spirit
calling.
Chi condensation also
Lin Yuan
consumed
took
a
a
lot
look
of
and
spirit
saw
chi
that it was
when
Gao
it condensed
Feng who was
spirit
calling.
chi crystals.
Brother,
In
Hehe.
addition, Lin Yuan was
I've also
already
prepared
preparing
me
to
the
nurture
location.
those phases that would mutate
It's a
under the
manner.
high spirit chi concentration.
Brother, you have
so
good
the consumption
taste.
of energy ores would
I
increase
saw that the
exponentially.
environment of the manor you live in is not
Previously,
bad.
Lin Yuan's energy energy or
Lin Yuan
reserves were
replied,
already far
"Wait
from
for me
reaching
at
the
the door."
standard.
Wait
Therefore,
for me at the door.
Lin Yuan planned to fill
I'll
this
get someone to
beetle-shaped
bring you
diamond
in.
face storage box to the brim with energy ores.
After saying that,
At the
Lin
same
Yuan
time,
went downstairs
Lin Yuan
and asked
decided
Wen
to
Yu to bring
increase the
Gao
quality
Feng
of
over.
energy ores he purchased
In
in
Lin
the
Yuan's
future.
opinion, his
He would no
transaction with
longer
Gao
purchase
Feng was a
low-grade
process
energy
of
ores
enriching
but
his
mid-grade
resources.
energy ores.
Through the
He
transaction
would read
with
the
Gao
latest
Feng,
chapter of
Lin Yuan
Beast
could obtain
Evolution
those
Merchant
precious
Claw
spiritual
Bookhouse
ingredients
for
or
free
phase that were not sold in the Star Web's rare life form pavilion. Soon, Gao Feng was brought to the entrance of the mansion by Wen Yu.
Lin Yuan still had to store a large batch of textured old pear wood plaque with the words "Return from far away." As long as the wood in the spirit-locked spatial zone was completely jade textured, under the sunlight, Lin Yuan could take them out and textured old pear wood plaque emitted a golden red luster. Then, the luster seemed to have that simple and unadorned wood parasol wood shelf. The moment Gao Feng entered the manor, there would not be any waste in the spirit-locked spatial zone. It was late autumn, Yuan already had plans for those precious fays that would transform in an environment with a high concentration of spirit qi. For example, the plant type and wood type phase always only sold in late autumn, while plant type and flower type phase would not bloom in winter and would be dormant. He could add another type for buyers to choose from. In this mansion seemed to be unaffected by the solar terms and were still which could only transform in a high concentration of spirit qi. The temperature inside the mansion was the same as outside, with no lost store. However, at that time, the plant's growth people would think of all sorts of ways to snatch them. Gao Feng arrived at the entrance of the mansion. Lin Yuan did not intend to use radiance dollars to trade for such phase. He could feel a large amount of spirit qi and a faint to exchange for some spiritual ingredients that rarely appeared in the rare life form pavilion. Putting aside the large amount of spirit qi, the day and jade-like luster was not a stranger to Gao Feng. Although such spiritual ingredients were also sold in the rare life form pavilion, it was not so easy to purchase them for free. Otherwise, he would not have thought of using any kind of bronze/epic phase to post a trade message in his this purchase kind of jade with no textured luster was very clear and seemed to have a natural refreshing feeling. Web and ordered a huge batch of mid-grade energy from an aristocratic family, could not be more familiar with this feeling. Lin Yuan first mailed his beetle-shaped diamond face storage box to Zhou Jia from jade-textured willow wood. However, Zhou Jiasen had yet to enter the mansion, and he could feel this halo during the day. To Lin Yuan through ostrich logistics. Knew that there was only one possibility. Otherwise, it would not be so easy to had a large number of things made of completely jade-textured logistics. The moment he stepped into the mansion, Yuan spent nearly 100 radiance dollars in a star web would store to purchase a large batch of precious wood. As the richest family in Wind Mist City, the wood that Lin Yuan had prepared previously was not considered very expensive. Apart from red direct descendant of the Gao family, precious, Gao Feng's the other wood could only be considered relatively to ordinary people. The more precious it could even be said that Gao Feng was price of the jade textured wood because Lin Yuan had the bronze/epic phase only chose 5 types of precious wood in the star web with the mutated island whale, among which were yellow rosewood, chicken wing to trade with Lin Yuan, green elm, and he wanted to show off the Gao family's strength and wealth and let Lin Yuan know the benefits of currently the most expensive on the market. However, looking at the furnishings integrate the resources, he naturally had to choose the where to put his arrogance as a descendant of the relatively expensive in the market to nurture. Gao Feng naturally recognized the glow-winged butterflies. Lin Yuan had also purchased a few large pieces of high-class agarwood and 5 fortune ranches. After these agarwood trees were completely jade-textured, such a large number of planned to use them as consumables in his ranches, glow-winged butterflies, and spirit-containing hibiscuses had been converted into radiance dollars to creation masters when there was a high concentration of spirit qi that would undergo a metamorphosis phase. There might be a few that had the potential to evolve to bronze, and the lowest grade of this succulent plant was simply too extravagant and shocking for such a fate item was casually raised in the residence. The silk pearls were the most unpopular among the bronze that looked like dragons and phoenixes. The bronze still had the vision to look at healing type fae, but its healing ability was too special. Epic high-class auspicious the string of pearls would dozens of ordinary by the plant to drip on the target's wounds to heal injuries. Coupled with the completely jade-textured furniture and the fish tank made of completely jade-textured red sandalwood, could heal the target's clearly realized how deep the foundation of this mansion was similar to other healing type faes. It wasn't that the Gao family didn't have completely jade-textured wood, it would be accompanied by them were made into ornaments and sculptures. Therefore, even if healing was inevitable that the furniture would be damaged if it was knocked around, if they only contracted a healing type fae like the string of pearls, casually using they would immediately made from the most unpopular existence among all healing type spirit qi professionals. The main residence of the Gao family would rather wait for other healing type spirit qi professionals or bring along the main residence, which have been around for thousands of years, were not as luxurious as the decorations and furnishings in this residence. The bronze succulent plant, the string of pearls had completely retracted his arrogance from this transaction. The flower brocade pearl, in a high-purity spirit qi environment, had only treated Lin Yuan as a superficial brother would still produce dew. He now really wanted to be friends with Lin Yuan, made from multiple spiritual ingredients, was very quick-witted, increasing the speed of the spiritual there was no harm in currying favor with this young man in front of him. This speed increase would not improve the creation master's of a wealthy family. Gao Feng had a good understanding of the time it took for the creation master to concoct the spirit fluid. In Gao
When
Feng's
concocting
opinion,
the spirit
only
fluid,
people with
a
similar
creation
strength
master
and
had to be
background
highly
become
focused,
friends who could
and a
share
slight
resources with
distraction
each
would
other.
cause the spirit fluid
Because the
concoction to
strong
fail.
could unite and become
To a
stronger.
certain extent, the
flower
combination
brocade
of the
pearl
strong
could shorten
and the
the
weak
time it
for
took
the
for the
strong
creation
would
master
either
to
absorb
concoct
the
the
weak
spirit
as a
fluid,
vassal, or be a burden.
It was the same as slightly
When you
reducing
said,
the failure
"Young
rate.
master, I've brought Gao
It was
Feng
not
over.
easy for a creation master
I'll
to
help Uncle Hu
successfully
to see if
concoct
there
the
are any
spirit
other
fluid,
things in the
and
manner
it would
that
often
need to be
require a lot of
meticulously
effort.
sculpted and designed."
In fact,
They
Lin
would need to
Yuan
fail
nodded,
several
and when you
times and
bowed
waste
and
a
left
lot
the
of
residence.
spiritual ingredients before they
This
could
made Gao
succeed
Feng
once.
even more shocked.
Therefore, any
Gao
creation
Feng
master
could feel
that
the
laid eyes
arrogance
on the
hidden
flower
deep in her
brocade
bones
pearls
from
would do
use
everything
bearing
they
and
could to
bearing.
purchase them.
This kind of
If there was
arrogance was the
anyone in
kind
this
of
world
arrogance
who
that
had
was
the
very
easiest
polite.
money to earn, it would
This kind
definitely
of
be the
arrogance
wealthy
with politeness
creation
could only
masters.
be nurtured in a true faction.
Lin Yuan had chosen the string
Gao
of
Feng
pearls
had always
because he
thought
wanted
that when
it
he
to
was also
transform
the
into
owner
the
of this
flower
mansion,
brocade pearl
but he
under the
now knew
high
that
purity
this
young
spirit
lady
chi
in
in
front of
front of
him
him
was just a servant of this
One
young
of the
man.
reasons was that the flower
Lin
brocade
Yuan didn't
pearls
care about
appearance
what
would
Gao
increase
Feng
the
was
success
thinking at
rate
this
of
moment
creation
and said,
masters concocting
"Come,
spirit
let's sit
fluids.
down and talk. Let's sit down and talk." It would also allow
Then,
more
Lin
spirit
Yuan
chi
poured a
professionals
cup of
to have the
spirit tea
opportunity
that had
to
just
heal
been brewed
phase
on the
and
table
recover
for
their
Gao
damaged
Feng.
roots.
Gao
The
Feng took a
radiant
sip of the
separations
spirit
creation
tea and
master
carefully savored
resources
it.
were extremely scarce.
He could tell that this spirit
Even
tea
if a
should be
creation
produced from a
master's
platinum
success rate
tea
in
tree.
concocting the spirit fluid
However,
was slightly
he didn't know what kind
they
of
would be able
platinum
to spare
tea
more
tree it
time to
was,
change the
as he
fates
had
of
never
spirit
drunk
chi
it before.
professionals with damaged roots
This
and earn
spirit
more
tea
radiant
had a trace
dollars.
of spiritual fragrance.
At the same
and when it
time,
rolled
it
down
would
the
also
throat,
allow
it
Lin
would
Yuan
immediately
to have a
harvest
sweet
more
aftertaste
creation
and bring
masters'
along a
leeks.
light sweetness.
Another reason was
The
that
moment
although
the
the string
spirit
of
tea
pearls
entered
was
the
a
mouth
bronze
and was
fei,
drunk, they were
it was
very
as though
small.
he had a light dream and was
It was because of
exceptionally
this reason
strange.
that Lin Yuan could
Gao
increase the
Feng
number
saw
of
the
string
crane
of pearls
silhouette
in the
sensor
limited
on the
space
table
in the
and
spirit
couldn't help
lock
but
spatial
ask,
zone.
"Can
The
I see
bronze
what
string
kind
of
of
pearls
incense
was
is
very
burning in
cheap,
this crane
and many
silhouette
star
sensor?"
web stores had chosen to
Lin
carry
Yuan
out
picked up the
promotions for the
teacup
bronze
and took a
succulent
sip of the
plant
string
string
of
of
tea.
pearls. "You're welcome.
Lin Yuan had
Please
bought
go ahead."
1,000 bronze string of
Since
pearls
he had already
and only
seen
spent
Lin Yuan's
800 radiant
foundation,
dollars.
Gao Feng didn't find it
Lin
strange
Yuan
that the
couldn't
crane
help but
silhouette
lament that the
sensor was
bronze string
completely
of
carved
pearls
from the
were simply
jade-textured
too cheap.
dragon blood gold silk
However,
bamboo.
when the bronze string
It
of
was
pearls
just that the
transformed
incense
into
in this
flower
sensor was
brocade
too
pearls
heavy,
under the high
and Gao Feng
concentration
felt that his
spirit
state
chi
of mind had
concentration,
completely
the
calmed
price
down
would be
when he
hard to
smelled the
estimate.
scent.
Phase
However,
like the flower
when Gao
brocade
Feng opened
pearls
the
were
lid that
simply
was
too
carved
rare
with the
and
crane
rarely
silhouette
appeared.
and glanced at the black
Most
crystal
of them were
powder that was
exchanged with
burning in
other
the sensor
items,
that was
so
emitting
there was
green
no
smoke.
specific price to refer to.
Gao Feng hurriedly put the
After
lid
all,
back on the crane
creation
silhouette
masters would
incense
never look
burner.
at the price when buying things.
Gao
If they
Feng
wanted
felt
to,
as though he
they
was
could
about to
just
split
increase the
open.
price.
Gao Feng
Who asked
immediately
creation
recognized
masters
this
to be
black
rich
crystal
and
powder
capricious.
as the completely jade-textured
Baidu was the
agarwood.
first to read the latest
A
chapter
trace
of
of such an
East
item could be
Evolution
sold
Merchant
for
Claw
hundreds of
Book House
thousands
for
of
free.
radiant dollars, and it was considered an elegant item. But now, someone had actually shattered it and burned it in the
Chapter
sensor.
258.
He simply did
The
not
water
take the
type and
radiant
chi
dollar
type
spiritual
seriously.
ingredients to induce the
Hundreds of
elemental
thousands of
shellfish to
radiant
evolve
dollars
were
had
very
been burned
easy
into
in just
buy.
a few minutes. As long as the
Could it be
elemental
just to smell
shellfish
this
were induced
agarwood's
by a
faint
single
and
element
imperceptible
spiritual
common
ingredient
fragrance?
in a pure spirit chi
When Lin
concentration,
Yuan saw
they
Gao
would
Feng
quickly
staring
mutate.
at the crane silhouette sensor
After
in a
purchasing
daze,
this batch
he
of
took the
resources,
initiative to take
Lin
out a
Yuan
bronze
received a
/
large amount of
spring
resources
lily
he had
and placed
purchased
it on the
more than an
table.
hour later.
This is a bronze
Lin Yuan
/
chose
epic
100
spirit
of the
lily.
1,000 silk beads
I
and
wonder
placed
what's
them
the
in the
situation
situation
with
with
the
the
spatial
abnormal
zone.
island whale that has yet to
Then,
hatch in
he
the
placed a
eggshell.
portion of the large
When
amount
Gao
of wood on
Feng
the
saw
shelf
the light
carved from
pink parasol
parasol
wood,
epic
filling
spirit
up
spring
spring
lily's
lily's 3 blooming flower
the
buds
spirit
and the
lock
spirit
spatial
chi
zone
flowing
was
like
now
a mountain
fully
spring,
utilized by
he was
Lin Yuan.
delighted.
Next,
Gao
Lin Yuan
Feng
had
waved
to
his
induce
hand and
two of
summoned
the
an
4
oval
crystal
crystalline
shellfish
eggshell
to
that was
evolve
nearly
into
half
a
a meter
meter
tall from the
elemental
flower-shaped
shellfish and
diamond
2
into
into storage
Celestine
box hanging
elemental
on his
shellfish.
wrist.
At
The
the same
eggshells of
time,
ordinary
Lin
island
Yuan placed
whales
the
were
crystal
dark blue
eggshell
with
with
some
the
brown
floating
lines.
island whales green and white
However,
patterns in
when
the
Lin
spirit
Yuan
lock
looked at
spatial
this
zone.
abnormal island whale egg
Lin
in front
Yuan
of Gao
sensed it
Feng.
and found that
He
the
saw that
floating
this
island
abnormal
whale's elemental
whale egg
eggshell
had
had not
extremely
absorbed
light
the
blue
high
color.
purity spirit chi in the
The blue
spirit
color
lock
had
spatial
all
zone.
sorts of indistinct
He
bluish-white
knew that
patterns.
this was because pure water and
Lin
air
Yuan
elements
could
were
not
still
help
needed
but
to
say,
be added at this time.
"Your island whale's
Only
eggshell
then would the
color is
crystal
much
eggshell
worse than
that
the
nurtured the
floating
floating
island
island
whale absorbed the high
Lin
purity
Yuan's
spirit
words
chi,
made Gao Feng
water,
a little
and air
embarrassed.
elements together.
After seeing Lin
Only
Yuan's
then could the
foundation,
floating
Gao
island whale
Feng
had
had
made
bit
up
by
his
bit
mind to make friends with Lin
Lin Yuan could
so
not
he went
help but
straight
think
to the
that
point.
given the floating island whale's
"Brother,
uniqueness,
you should know about
if it had
the
not
breeding
been
of
brought out
island
of the deep
whales.
sea by the Gao family
If an
and met
island
him,
whale
it
wants to
probably
hatch
would
from
not
its
have
eggshell,
hatched.
it needs to
The
devour a
spirit
lot of
chi
spirit
concentration
chi
in
water
the depths
elements.
of the sea was very high.
Isn't there a
and it could
saying that a
satisfy
whale
the
swallows
ordinary
the world?
island whale's spirit chi
Therefore,
needs.
the amount of resources
same
needed
time,
to breed a
the
fantasy
seawater
breed
contained a
island
lot of
whale
water
is even
elements.
more than the cost of feeding
After
100
a very
King
long
Tian
time,
powerhouses.
the ordinary island
Baidu
whale would
read the
absorb
latest
enough chapter
spirit
of
chi
and
and
water
water
elements
elements
and break
claw
out of the
book house
crystal
for
eggshell.
free. However, the floating island whale's incubation required the addition of air elements in addition to spirit chi and water elements. That Lin Yuan was listening to him seriously. There were no air elements in the deep sea, so although the floating island whale had transformed into a more powerful life toward absorbing, it was still a floating water elements. Perhaps the original intention of nature was not to allow this mutation to continue. Chi and water elements. Lin Yuan took the four elemental shellfish that had awakened from their infancy stage to tell you the truth. The spiritual power in his body to quickly inject spirit chi into the elemental shellfish. Lin Yuan was already using true data to observe this mutated island whale that was still in the crystal eggshell and had yet to hatch. Then, he took out the water elemental spiritual ingredient. This mutated island whale in the crystal eggshell was no longer called an island whale. It was called the floating island whale. Under the influence of the high-purity spiritual energy and the fragments of the bronze rank aquatic whale that contained water element, two of the elemental shellfishes originally white shells /water dark blue vein patterns. Normal, this floating island whale was not just a water type waves of the sea, but a water enchi dual type. At the same time, the elemental shellfish with under true wave-like patterns opened its shell, really and the flesh inside gradually turned light blue. When ordinary island whales evolved into the shells of the two elemental shellfish turned light varying sizes in the sea according to their strength. Lin Yuan knew that these two elemental shellfish had mutated into aquamarine. The island whale's contractor could carry out construction as he wished. He enhanced them from elite 9/epic to elite X/born in a whale fall preys in the sea and would not be attacked by any the elemental shellfish to elite X because he was afraid that it would evolve on its own when it spontaneously protect the island whale when it was attacked from high spirit chi concentration. The island whale itself did not have any special elemental shellfish had mutated into the aquamarine elemental shellfish. On the contrary, no longer needed few life forms of the same grade could resist the island whale/epic aquamarine elemental shellfish would only evolve again was under the influence of water elemental spiritual ingredients often existed on its back. As long as Lin Yuan did not provide the floating island whale and normal island whales was that normal island whales could only form an island on their back in the epic to bronze. However, the floating island whale had two choices. Also used very ordinary gas type. It could either become an island in the sea or fly to the sky and build a floating city on its into the Celestine elemental shellfish. Gao Feng's words had also entered Lin Yuan's epic Celestine elemental shellfish's shell and shell that was incubating the floating island whale and tried to inject spiritual power into it. At that moment, Lin Yuan had the crystal eggshell would also reject into high concentration spirit chi that he was transmitting over shellfish and two elite with true data. Lin Yuan understood the reason. Previously, when the Gao family had been cultivating the floating island whale that had yet to hatch in the egg, they had not grasped the basic saw that the aquamarine elemental shellfish if one wanted to hatch an island whale shellfish, one could not just rely on a large amount of spiritual energy in the spirit lock spatial zone. At the same time, spiritual materials that contained a large amount of water elements were needed to promote the normal hatching of the island whale. The Celestine elemental shellfish also produced a thumb-sized Celestine pearl. It was supplemented with a large amount of marine elemental shellfish and the two Celestine elemental shellfish beside the crystal eggshell gestating the floating island whales. Whether it was the aquamarine elemental shellfish or the Celestine elemental shellfish, as long as the next elemental pearl was produced, the previous elemental pearl would be pushed out of the shell and didn't require spiritual energy like other island whale's crystal eggshell. Instead, he needed to use his blood to imprint his scent on the floating water whale's eggshell for a long time. Elemental pearl that contained the floating island whale of floating island whale began to truly absorb the high concentration spirit. It would recognize the person with the smell of blood as its mother. This time, at the same time, the floating island whale would take the initiative to form a contract with the person it treated as its mother. The floating island whale's contract method almost absorbed all the spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone. Hatching an island whale wasn't something that ordinary people was not like a bottomless pit that could decompose energy or watched as Lin Yuan stroked the crystal concentration and nurtured the mutated island whale and reached the island whale spatial zone's limit. It would immediately decompose the energy island whale is good enough. I also brought a lot of source type items to maintain the spirit lock spatial zone spirit chi Lin Yuan raised his brows. However, Lin Yuan had a diamond face storage floating island whale energy ores, but how could he choose to let it go after such consumption? I'll trade this island whale, but it may not be enough to trade for my in and out a few times. Epic phase. He could feel a hazy consciousness forming in the crystal eggshell that nurtured the floating island whale at that moment, right? Lin Yuan let the amber button-shaped island whale that hasn't hatched yet. Precipitate a feather formed by the day and night spirit silver. Gao Feng would rather keep this mutated feather formed by the day and night spirit silver and slashed it across his palm. In the entire Radiance Federation, then probably he placed his palm on the floating island whale's crystal eggshell. The consciousness in the floating island whale's crystal eggshell seemed to have found something and absorbed the Gao family's blood flowing out of Lin Yuan's palm. They encountered a huge storm and tsunami. Could feel that the consciousness in the floating island whale's crystal eggshell was swept far away by the ocean currents. However, and the Gao family's blood in the lonely sink into the deep sea to avoid the wind and waves that could tear steel apart. After absorbing enough of his blood, just as they were avoiding the wind and the floating island whale's crystal eggshell emitted a childlike to find a large whale fall at the bottom of the sea that had almost ended. At this point, this floating island the location of this large whale fall and only found two crystal eggshells that had yet to hatch and were pregnant with the island whale. However, when the Gao family's experts picked up these two crystal eggshells that were pregnant with the island whale, they were frantically besieged by the marine phase. The sky was bright, and at the cost of the death of 7 of the Gao family's after having breakfast and saying goodbye to a crystal eggshell that was pregnant with the island whale, on a journey of training. The Moon Empress was feeding the platinum spirit siphon goldfish in the lotus pond in the inner palace. She looked at the lotus flowers in the pond and muttered, "I wonder how many diamond/legend lotuses in this pool will be able to comprehend the willpower rune and evolve into fantasy breeds after my spirit liquid is poured." Then, the Moon Empress looked at the lotus pond and shouted softly, "Listen up, all of you. When spring comes, the lotus pond in the rear palace will only be planted with suzerain tier lotuses. Those that haven't reached the suzerain tier will be moved to the garden in front of the palace." These peak stage diamond lotuses of various colors had already developed spiritual intelligence. When they heard the Moon Empress words, the lotuses and lotus pods swayed. At this time, Xian Yu walked to the back hall and said in a clear voice, "Moon Empress, young lord's assistant, Wen Yu, has come to the Radiant Moon Palace to seek an audience with the Moon Empress. I wonder if the Moon Empress wishes to see Wen Yu." If it was in the past, Wen Yu wouldn't even have the chance to seek an audience with the Moon Empress. Wen Yu wouldn't even have the chance to speak to Xian Yu. Moreover, Xian Yu had taken the initiative to ask the Moon Empress for Wen Yu's opinion. Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress didn't stop feeding the fish pellets one by one into the lotus pond. Instead, she said, "Bring Wen Yu to the rear palace to see me." Hearing this, Xian Yu acknowledged the order and left. At the same time, Xian Yu thought to herself. She didn't expect the Moon Empress to ask Wen Yu to seek an audience with the rear palace. The rear palace wasn't a place that ordinary people could enter as they wished. Even Class 5 creation masters like Bamboo Monarch and Chef Supreme wouldn't dare to take a step into the rear palace without the Moon Empress' permission. Wen Yu's identity had changed because of Lin Yuan's choice to choose her as his assistant. The lotus pond was full of dancing lotuses, and the fish were playing in the lotus pond, causing ripples. Wen Yu was very nervous and was trying hard not to tremble. This was the first time Wen Yu had the chance to face the Moon Empress. The Moon Empress looked at Wen Yu calmly and asked in a cold voice, "Why do you seek an audience with me?" Wen Yu's eyes slowly changed from apprehension to incomparably firm. "Moon Empress, I want to become stronger." The Moon Empress didn't comment. "Why?" Wen Yu gritted her teeth and said stubbornly. "Moon Empress, I don't want to become a useless person by Lord Lin Yuan's side." Lin Yuan was walking on the royal capital streets and holding his mobile phone, preparing to book a flying fei. Suddenly, the mother of Bloodbath's strange and pleasant voice entered his ears. "Lin Yuan, where do you plan to go for your first training trip?" Lin Yuan asked without any hesitation. "I plan to go to the Dimensional Rift's interior to train." Baidu read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 259. Lin Yuan had already made plans for his training outside the Endless Forest. If he still went to the Endless Forest to harvest, he would only obtain some relatively rare and low-grade feis. As a creation master, it was easy for feis to have a favorable impression of him, so the danger he could encounter in the Endless Forest was very limited. Given Lin Yuan's current strength, even if he encountered a platinum fei, the gold eye/fantasy eye source sand would be able to put up a fight. In fact, Lin Yuan could even control the gold eye/fantasy eye source sand to kill low-grade platinum feis effortlessly. The Source-type Source Sand's abilities developed in all aspects. Defense, attack, control, all of these abilities were well-rounded. However, ever since Lin Yuan had promoted the fantasy breed Source Sand to Gold and enhanced its exclusive skill Metal Consume manifestation twice, the Source Sand's defense had been greatly improved. If Lin Yuan let the Source Sand precipitate the feathers formed by the day and night spirit silver to form 4 wings, the 4 wings on his back would spread out. The 4 wings on Lin Yuan's back opened up, and he just needed to circulate his spiritual power to transform the black wings of slaughter into white wings of protection. The white wings of protection could withstand an all-out attack from a Platinum Fae. However, if he resisted an all-out attack from a Platinum Fae, he would have to consume a lot of spiritual power to let the day and night spirit silver's feathers release the attack damage to the surrounding environment. Moreover, the Source Sand's exclusive skill, Sand Granule Spirit Acceptance, hid the heart-penetrating iron line, which was equivalent to a Platinum 3/Flawless Fae. Under a sudden all-out attack, few Platinum Faes could withstand it. Moreover, he was a creation master in the Endless Forest, and he was not willing to slaughter Faes wantonly. Therefore, since Lin Yuan wanted to experience a life and death training, there was no place more suitable than the inside of the dimensional rift. Upon hearing that, the mother of Bloodbath replied, "There are a total of 4 types of dimensional rifts in the vicinity of the royal capital that are currently open and under control. Have you decided which one you want to train in?" There were a total of 5 types of dimensional rifts. Apart from a large number of dimensional fays, there were also some spiritual ingredients that could only be produced in the dimensional rifts. In the hands of creation masters, these spiritual ingredients were used to concoct spirit fluids to evolve fays and improve their quality. Therefore, near every major city in the Radiance Federation, there was a dimensional rift entrance that had been controlled by the Radiance Federation officials. These controlled dimensional rifts were good places for the Radiance Federation's younger generation to train. At the same time, it was also a good place for adventurers who accepted missions to harvest spiritual materials. In these controlled dimensional rifts, even if one couldn't find the spiritual ingredients in the dimensional rifts, killing some dimensional life forms and obtaining their flesh would be considered a considerable income. However, among the 5 types of dimensional rifts, only 4 were controlled by the Radiance Federation. The method to control a dimensional rift was to have multiple King-class expert squads cleanse a Class 3 dimensional rift. He then took 2 of the 3 source-type items produced by the Class 3 dimensional rift, leaving only 1. The remaining source-type item would maintain the dimensional rift's opening. Under such circumstances, the strength of the dimensional lifeforms in a Class 3 dimensional rift would decrease due to the decrease in source-type items. Each open dimensional rift was actually like a transit station. Outside the transit station was the human's real world, and on the other side was the dimensional lifeform's world. The area inside the dimensional rift was very large. When there was only 1 source-type item left in a Class 3 dimensional rift, it was equivalent to closing the gateway to the dimensional lifeform world. Therefore, the dimensional lifeforms that emerged from the other world in the controlled Class 3 dimensional rift could only maintain the standard of pinnacle Class 2 dimensional rifts. The 4 types of dimensional rifts controlled by the Radiance Federation were the Alien Insect Dimensional Rift, the Abyss Dimensional Rift, the Swamp Dimensional Rift, and the Underground Dimensional Rift. The 5th type of dimensional rift was uncontrollable by humans. This was because the 5th type of dimensional rift only opened in the ocean, and it was the water world dimensional rift. Upon hearing the mother of Bloodbath's words, Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and said, "Let's go train in the Abyss Dimensional Rift." Let's go to the Abyss Dimensional Rift to train. The life forms in the Abyss Dimensional Rift have the strongest individual strength and are most suitable for honing combat skills. The Alien Insect Dimensional Rift could be said to be Lin Yuan's old friend. The Alien Insect Dimensional Rift had always been said to be the strongest among the dimensional rifts that opened on land. This was because the number of insects that gushed out of the Alien Insect Dimensional Rift was far greater than the Abyss Dimensional Rift, the Swamp Dimensional Rift, and the Underground Dimensional Rift. However, the Alien Insect Dimensional Rift was nothing to Lin Yuan's source-type lifeform, Red Thorn, as long as Red Thorn had the chance to attack. Then the boundless insect sea would not be that big of a threat. Especially after Red Thorn became stronger, the sea of flowers that it spawned would also become more powerful. The sea of flowers spawned by Red Thorn would also be more harmful to those low-grade alien insects. As long as these low-grade alien insects entered the sea of flowers, they would immediately become fertilizer for Red Thorn. Among the 4 types of dimensional rifts, the swamp dimensional rift was the most unsuitable for training. This was because there were all kinds of strange marsh lifeforms hidden in the swamp dimensional rift. Most of the lifeforms in the swamp dimensional rift were highly toxic. In the muddy swamps of the swamp dimensional rift, there might be a deadly, venomous dimensional life form hidden somewhere. Most of the underground dimensional rifts were filthy and ugly underground lifeforms. Apart from the water world dimensional rift, the earth dimensional rift was currently the least explored dimensional rift by humans. This was because there was almost no light in the underground dimensional rift, and the deeper one went, the darker it would be. Therefore, only some spirit chi professionals who had contracted phase with illumination functions would have the capital to explore the underground dimensional rift. The underground dimensional rift had an abundance of metals and spiritual ingredients. It was just like the day and night spirit silver that Lin Yuan had previously allowed the source sand to devour. It had been excavated from the underground dimensional rift. This was also the reason why the day and night spirit silver was rare and expensive. As for the abyss dimensional rift, it was mostly filled with extremely powerful abyssal demons. There were many types of demons in the abyss dimensional rift. Demons were also divided into grades like the alien insects. However, demons of the same grade would mostly have different abilities. The alien insect dimensional rifts were the strongest among the abyss dimensional rifts, the swamp dimensional rifts, and the underground dimensional rifts because of their numbers. Among the 4 types of dimensional rifts that opened on land, the abyss dimensional rift had the least number of dimensional lifeforms. However, the genetic model of dimensional lifeforms like the abyssal demons was relatively complex. Compared to other dimensional lifeforms from other dimensional rifts of the same grade, their individual strength was much stronger. Furthermore, many of the demons in the abyss dimensional rift were adept at using flames. The flames used by the demons in the abyss dimensional rift had withering characteristics and were extremely damaging to plant-type phase. The mother of Bloodbath muttered to himself for a moment, and that strange yet pleasant voice echoed in Lin Yuan's ears again. If you are going to the abyss dimensional rift to train, the class 3 abyss dimensional rift outside the royal capital is more suitable for you. The class 3 abyss dimensional rift outside the royal capital originally had 3 source-type items, but there is only 1 left now. Only class 4 demons will appear in the dimensional rift, and the strongest class 4 demon will only be equivalent to a pinnacle platinum fae. The danger level is similar to that of a pinnacle class 2 dimensional rift, and it is very suitable for you to undergo life and death training. You can go all out and hone your combat skills. When your life is in danger, I will protect you. Lin Yuan was a little curious as to why the mother of Bloodbath, who usually did not speak much, suddenly spoke so much this time. Her attitude towards him had also changed quite a bit compared to before. Before Lin Yuan could think more, the mother of Bloodbath's strange yet pleasant voice echoed again. However, there are still 2 months before the active period of the dimensional rifts. At that time, the Radiance Federation officials will seal these class 3 dimensional rifts that are controlled by the royal capital. Therefore, you have less than 2 months left to train in this class 3 abyss dimensional rift. Lin Yuan nodded and immediately ordered a gold flying fae, broad-winged gray swallow. Lin Yuan rode on the broad-winged gray swallow's back and headed toward the controlled class 3 abyss dimensional rift not far from the royal capital. Baidu was the first to read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 260. When the mother of Bloodbath had experienced the world cleansing and evolved from suzerain/myth I to myth 2, it had known of Lin Yuan's strength. At that time, the mother of Bloodbath had not thought too much about it. However, when it recalled Lin Yuan's strength, it was shocked. In the mother of Bloodbath's opinion, even if Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple, it was too shocking for him to have such strength at this age. Therefore, the mother of Bloodbath had recommended Lin Yuan to train in the controlled class 3-dimensional rift. Lin Yuan sat on the gold broad-winged gray swallow's back and faced the late autumn morning wind with his eyes closed to rest. The gold broad-winged gray swallow's speed could be ranked in the top 3 among the gold wind-type fays that could be reserved in the royal capital. Although the gold broad-winged gray swallow was inferior to the platinum divine travel black swallow, it was much more comfortable than the platinum divine travel black swallow while taking into account its flying speed. At least when Lin Yuan sat on the gold broad-winged gray swallow's back, he would not feel his butt resting on it. The controlled class 3 abyss dimensional rift outside the royal capital was not considered far from the royal capital. The gold broad-winged gray swallow only needed to fly for 2 to 3 hours to reach the location of the controlled class 3 abyss dimensional rift. Lin Yuan got off the gold broad-winged gray swallow and looked at the entrance of the controlled class 3 abyss dimensional rift. He could not help but sigh. At that moment, there were many vendors at the entrance of the controlled class 3 abyss dimensional rift. These vendors were selling daily necessities. This scene reminded Lin Yuan of Millstone Town. However, Millstone Town had experienced close to 100 years of hardships and had already become a stable gathering place. Many spirit chi professionals had settled in Millstone Town for generations. However, although the entrance of the controlled class 3 abyss dimensional rift looked similar to Millstone Town's market, it could not be maintained for long. However, if they wanted to maintain a business in this controlled class 3 abyss dimensional rift's entrance, they would not be able to do so for long. After about every decade, the dimensional rift would enter an active phase. Once the dimensional rifts became active, dimensional rifts would open one after another all over the Radiance Federation in the next year. The first half of the year was fine, as there were relatively few dimensional rifts. However, in the second half of the year, the frequency of these active dimensional rifts would increase. In the Radiance Federation's history, there was even a Class 4 dimensional rift that had opened during the active phase of the dimensional rifts. The Class 6 dimensional lifeforms in the Class 4 dimensional rift had the strength of a suzerain fae. Every time the dimensional rift was active, the Radiance Federation would enter a state of war preparation. This year was filled with danger, but it was also filled with opportunities. This was because the active phase of the dimensional rift every 10 years would contribute a large number of source-type items. However, for controlled class 3-dimensional rifts, during the active phase of the dimensional rift, the only remaining source-type item had to be taken out. He would then destroy the controlled class 3-dimensional rift. Otherwise, during the period of the dimensional rift riot, this originally controlled class 3-dimensional rift might very well evolve into a class 4-dimensional rift. At that time, it would truly become a natural disaster. For controlled class 3-dimensional rift entrances like the Radiance Federation, the Guild Alliance would set up branches. Here, spirit chi professionals could form teams and even accept missions related to the Abyss Dimensional Rift's spiritual ingredient collection. The Abyss Dimensional Rift did not produce any particularly precious spiritual ingredients. Even if there were, most of them were fire-attributed spiritual materials, and were relatively simple. However, there was a special flame in the Abyss Dimensional Rift. This special flame was very magical. As long as spirit chi was injected into it, it would keep burning. This flame was rather useful for some lifestyle class spirit chi professionals. For example, some spirit craftsmen, blacksmiths, and other lifestyle class spirit chi professionals all needed this special flame. In fact, the Chef Supreme, one of the Radiance Federation's 5 Class 5 Creation Masters, was holding a special flame that was said to be a fusion of several kinds of Class 4 Abyss Dimensional Rifts. After these special flames fused with each other, they would form a brand new flame. The Chef Supreme used this flame to cook delicacies that could help fays improve their quality and quickly evolve. At the same time, it could also restore the fays' damaged roots. Lin Yuan noticed that many people were pointing at him and discussing something. He tilted his ear and listened carefully. How many times have we seen this silver-masked guy this week? If not 20, there are at least 10. Big brother, can you not use this week? Today is only Tuesday. Can't you just say that there are at least 10 on Monday? This silver-masked kid isn't professional enough. He isn't even wearing black clothes. This is the most unprofessional person I have seen. However, the silver mask on his face is much more exquisite than others. Lin Yuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm the worst person to pretend to be myself. With that thought in mind, Lin Yuan suddenly froze for a moment. Why did I use the word pretend? I am already one. Lin Yuan didn't choose a team like the previous time when he went to the endless forest for the wild harvest. This time, after Lin Yuan verified his identity, he entered the Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift's entrance and entered the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift. After entering the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift, Lin Yuan realized that the inside of the Dimensional Rift was much more prosperous than the outside. The entrance was like a large camp that sold some of the necessities in the Abyss Dimensional Rift. In the Abyss Dimensional Rift, Lin Yuan could feel that the temperature here was at least 30 degrees Celsius higher than the outside world. The temperature outside the royal capital was 15 degrees Celsius, but the temperature in this Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift was close to 50 degrees Celsius and had a sulfuric smell. This scorching heat made Lin Yuan feel uncomfortable. However, Lin Yuan didn't care about this scorching heat at that moment. Instead, when no one was paying attention, an amber button-shaped crystal object that was less than the size of a bottle cap fell to the ground at Lin Yuan's cuff. This amber button-shaped crystal turned into a wisp of fine sand and drilled into the Abyss Dimensional Rift's purplish-black soil. The source-type source sand was only instinctive and didn't need Lin Yuan to consume spiritual power to control it. Therefore, Lin Yuan simply let the gold eye/fantasy eye source sand freely create sand in the soil under his feet in the direction he was heading. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly felt someone gently tugging at his sleeve. Lin Yuan turned around and realized it was a young girl who was a few years younger than Chu Xiai. The young girl's skin was a little red and had some small freckles. However, she had an infectious and innocent smile on her face. Her big round eyes were like juicy black grapes. At that moment, the little girl saw Lin Yuan looking at her, so she handed over the ice blue grass in her hand and said, Lin Yuan, you're a little girl. Big brother, you like Brother He too, right? Little Zao likes it too. Here's an ice mist grass for Big Brother. I hope Big Brother won't be bullied by those evil demons. Lin Yuan looked at the little girl who handed him the ice mist grass and squatted down to touch the little girl's raised ahog. Zao, why did you give Big Brother the ice mist grass? Lin Yuan looked at the ahog on the little girl's head and could not help but think of Chu Xiai. Chu Xiai always had a ahog on her head that liked to stand up. When he saw that this little girl's skin had a trace of redness, Lin Yuan knew that this little girl must have been living in this controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift for a long time. The redness of the skin was the result of staying in a hot environment for a long time. Fays like the ice mist grass were very common in the outside world, and the price was close to 100 Federation dollars. The ice mist herb was a very ordinary normal fay. All it could do was release some icy mist to lower the temperature of the surrounding environment. Upon hearing that, the little girl revealed a big smile and said, That's right. Big Brother He is little Zao's idol, so little Zao gave Big Brother an ice mist grass. Little Zao only gave others a blade of grass. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. It turned out that this little girl called little Zao was his fan. However, Lin Yuan felt a little strange. Little Zao, why do you give the leaves of the ice mist grass to everyone who comes in? Hearing that, little Zao said happily. It was Mommy who asked little Zao to do this. Mommy said that those uncles, aunties, big brothers, and big sisters who came to the dimensional rift would beat up those baddies, which would reduce the number of baddies. Only then can Mummy bring little Zao here to bring some delicious food to eldest uncle, eldest aunt, eldest brother, and eldest sister. Only then can little Zao eat the granulated ice Mummy made every day. Mummy said. At this point, Lin Yuan saw the girl named little Zao pondering for a moment. Then, little Zao seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes lit up. Mommy said this is called gratitude. When Lin Yuan saw this girl called Little Zao's innocent smile, the face behind the mask also revealed an extremely sunny smile. This girl called Little Zao's words gently caressed Lin Yuan's heart. This simple sentence seemed to shine with a radiant light. Baidu, read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 261. Lin Yuan rubbed Little Zao's head and was preparing to stand up. Just as Lin Yuan was about to stand up, he suddenly felt a prying gaze from the side. This gaze wasn't the gaze of an ordinary passerby. Instead, this gaze was concealing a faintly discernible probing and sizing him up. Lin Yuan followed the direction of the gaze and turned his head. He saw an inconspicuous middle-aged man that didn't have any presence in the crowd sizing him up. When Lin Yuan suddenly turned his head, the middle-aged man was startled. It was obvious that he didn't expect Lin Yuan to suddenly turn around. The middle-aged man instantly concealed the probing expression on his face and laughed heartily as he walked over. "Hey! Young man, you are also acting as black, right? There are plenty of adventurers wearing silver masks that enter the Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift every day, but it seems like Little Zao is the closest to you." Lin Yuan's brows behind the mask creased without a trace. This inconspicuous middle-aged man might be speaking very naturally, but when Lin Yuan turned his head around, the middle-aged man's face suddenly changed into a probing expression, and Lin Yuan had personally witnessed it. In fact, if Lin Yuan wasn't wearing Genius's Tool Transformation silver mask, he wouldn't have noticed it. As Lin Yuan had been wearing Genius's Tool Transformation silver mask, even though Lin Yuan's eyes were constantly looking at Little Zao, his perception of the surroundings was still very strong. Within a 10-meter radius, including the blind spot at the back of Lin Yuan's head, Lin Yuan's perception was extremely sharp. Genius's Tool Transformation silver mask might not be able to see through those meticulously arranged assassinations by high-ranked spirit chi professionals. However, Lin Yuan could still sense the middle-aged man's probing gaze. Lin Yuan, who had lived 2 lifetimes, had an additional lifetime of experience, and he was able to understand the emotions represented by other people's gazes. The middle-aged man's probing gaze had a trace of anxiety. However, this anxiety didn't seem to be coming from Lin Yuan. On the contrary, it seemed like this middle-aged man was hiding a trace of anxiety, which was why he was spying on and sizing up Lin Yuan, who had just entered the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift. In other words, the middle-aged man was probing him to see if he would become an uncertain factor that could affect the matter that the middle-aged man was worried about. The middle-aged man's appearance might not be eye-catching, but Lin Yuan was able to use Genius's precise memory to memorize the middle-aged man's aura and figure. Little Zao looked at the middle-aged man who suddenly spoke and walked over. She waved her little hand and said, "Hello, big uncle." This unremarkable middle-aged man sized up Lin Yuan a few more times before waving his hand at Little Early. He then stood at the side and sized up the other adventurers that had just entered the dimensional rift. After the unremarkable middle-aged man left, Xiao Zhao whispered to Lin Yuan. "Big brother, this big uncle has been here for more than 2 years, but this big uncle is so strange." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan asked softly, "Why does Little Zao feel that this eldest uncle is very strange? This eldest uncle doesn't have a stall here. Other big brothers, big sisters, big uncles, and big aunts that come to explore will come here to buy some things from their mothers before entering to fight the demons and baddies. However, this eldest uncle will only leave for 1 or 2 days and will spend most of his time here doing nothing." Speaking of this, Little Zao spoke with some concern. "Big brother, do you think this eldest uncle can't defeat the demons and will fight the baddies? If that is the case, will this eldest uncle starve?" When Lin Yuan heard this, his originally frowning brows furrowed even more. This middle-aged man was indeed strange. However, Lin Yuan didn't probe too much into this middle-aged man. At the entrance of the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift in the royal capital, be it outside or inside, there was a king-class expert dispatched by the Radiance Federation's officials to stand guard. Therefore, no one dared to cause trouble here. If they did, they would be punished according to the severity of the situation. However, even if this Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift was controlled, it was only at the pinnacle of Class 2, and it was still very dangerous inside. Therefore, this order and stability was only maintained at the entrance of this controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift. Once inside, life and death would depend on one's strength and opportunities. This Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift had been controlled here for 7 to 8 years. It was unknown how many lives this controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift would devour every year. Of course, the death of these spirit chi professionals wasn't only due to the demons in this Abyss Dimensional Rift, but also the humans who were also spirit chi professionals. There were plenty of opportunities in this controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift, such as rare spiritual ingredients or even strange flames. Such opportunities were often accompanied by great value, so it wasn't strange for people to kill and snatch their treasures. After the Spirit Chi awakening, the human evolution process had changed from the original foundation. Before the Spirit Chi awakening, humans relied more on wisdom and not martial strength. However, after the Spirit Chi awakening, humans were like the many other creatures in the world. They needed to increase their individual strength to deal with the challenges of evolution. After the Spirit Chi awakening, there were also great benefits in the process of increasing human strength. One of the greatest benefits was the extension of lifespan. It was just like after becoming a king-class expert, even at the age of 100, the body's cell vitality would still be comparable to that of a 20 or 30-year-old youth. Lin Yuan walked into the Abyss Dimensional Rift's depths from this controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift's entrance. Along the way, Lin Yuan didn't summon Chimey or Red Thorn. Lin Yuan's main objective for this training was to practice how to use the Source-type Source Sand in combat. Ever since Lin Yuan had obtained the Source Sand, he had never used it in combat. Therefore, in this controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift, Lin Yuan had to properly practice using the Source Sand's combat ability. Although the Source Sand's exclusive skill, Sand Control, allowed Lin Yuan to use the Source Sand as his own arm, being able to control the Source Sand as his own arm and controlling it with the greatest efficiency in combat were two different things. Controlling the Source Sand as his own arm was a kind of ability, but controlling it with the greatest efficiency was a kind of experience. Not long after entering this controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift, Lin Yuan saw a group of Class 2 demons. Baidu was the first to read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 262. This group of Class 2 demons was a group of horn demons. Horn demons were considered the most notorious existences among the Class 2 dimensional lifeforms in the Abyss Dimensional Rift. Each horned demon had a huge horn on its head. This horn was spiral-shaped and had a strange flame pattern on its tip. Each horn demon was the size of a bull, and its thick and strong limbs allowed the horn demons to carry shocking power when they charged. When the horn demons charged forward, the flame pattern would emit sparks with the withering characteristic after hitting the target. At the same time, the horn demons could also spit out flames with the withering characteristic. Horn demons had great strength. Although Class 2 horn demons were only equivalent to silver phase, Class 2 dimensional lifeforms were comparable to gold phase. However, the Class 2 dimensional lifeforms, horn demons, were comparable to some gold phase in terms of strength. Furthermore, horn demons could spit out flames with the withering characteristic. This powerful strength and flames with withering characteristics made the horn demon's single combat strength almost the top of the Class 2 dimensional creatures. This was the benefit of a Class 2 dimensional life form like horn demons with a complex genetic model. However, such a complex genetic model wasn't so friendly to Lu Jie's Source-type Insect Queen and Lin Yuan's Source-type Source Sand. If Lu Jie's Insect Queen devoured an insect species Fey with a complex genetic model like the Abyss dimensional life form, the horn demon's genetic model, the amount of spiritual power required to replicate such an insect species Fey with a complex genetic model was far more than replicating other insect species Feys with relatively simple genetic models. Just like Lin Yuan's gold/fantasy breed source-type source sand, the gravel spirit acceptance could accept a heart-penetrating iron line that was equivalent to platinum 3/flawless. However, if the gravel spirit acceptance was a horn demon, it could only accept a horn demon that was equivalent to a pinnacle gold/flawless fae. A pinnacle gold/flawless fae might have extremely strong combat power among pinnacle gold/flawless faes. However, it was completely powerless against the heart-penetrating iron line that was equivalent to a platinum 3/flawless fae. The diversity of horn demons' attacks allowed them to become a dimensional life form that cultivated elemental magic and physical strength. However, the heart-penetrating iron line's attack method was very simple. It relied on the explosive power and penetrative ability of its slender and hard body to assassinate the target. However, Lin Yuan had to admit that when he looked at the aura of this group of horned demons, which wasn't considered a lot, he felt that it was even more oppressive than a small sea of insects. This small group of horned demons had obviously discovered Lin Yuan. After seeing Lin Yuan, this group of bull-sized horned demons let out a strange but abnormally loud roar and cruelly charged at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan looked at the 40 to 50 horned demons that were charging at him and extended his hand unhurriedly. The moment Lin Yuan raised his hand, the ground beneath the horned demons collapsed, and the originally hard purplish-black soil started to boil like quicksand. The boiling sand directly stopped the centaur's charge. The centaur desperately tried to break free from the surging quicksand. But at that moment, Lin Yuan's raised hand clenched into a fist. The instant Lin Yuan's hand clenched into a fist, the 40 to 50 horned demons suddenly let out intense and painful cries. Subsequently, these horned demons stopped trying to break free from the surging quicksand. Behind each horned demon, there was a broad and thick sword made of bluish-black ferromanganese. The 40 or so horned demons that were the size of bulls were tied to the thick sword by the ferromanganese chains that were separated from the source sand. Due to the source sand's exclusive skill, metal consume manifestation, the surging quicksand was able to form a chained sword made of ferromanganese from the gravel. The surface of the ferromanganese was complemented by the abnormally sharp metal characteristics. As the horned demons struggled violently, they immediately cut open large wounds on their bodies. As the horned demons struggled again, the wounds quickly turned into holes due to the repeated cuts. A large amount of purplish-red blood, which was unique to abyssal demons, flowed out of the holes, and the blood immediately vanished when it flowed into the quicksand. Lin Yuan shook his head. These horned demons weren't enough for him to train. Immediately after, Lin Yuan's mind moved, and the chained sword instantly tightened. In just a moment, these bull-sized horned demons stopped breathing. Lin Yuan waved his hand and stored all these horned demons into his leaf-shaped face storage box. Mosquitoes might be small, but they were still meat. These Class II Abyss-dimensional lifeforms, the horned demons, were very suitable as food for the Bronze 6/Epic Red Thorn. Now, Red Thorn was no longer consuming large quantities of alien insect-dimensional lifeforms' flesh. Instead, it was consuming large quantities of Abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh. The Abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh also contained extremely strong acidity. However, this acidity was different from the alien insect-dimensional lifeforms' blood. The acid in the flesh of the alien insect-dimensional creatures was extremely corrosive. However, the Abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh's acidity was like sulfur. Apart from being corrosive, it also had a burning and withering characteristic. Initially, when Red Thorn was at the elite grade, consuming Abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh would be a burden on the mouth of relinquished digestion. However, now that Red Thorn's strength had increased, it wasn't so restrained when eating Abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh. At the same time, the Abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh's acidity with the burning and withering characteristic could make the acid in Red Thorn's digestive fluid more diverse. In fact, while Red Thorn was consuming Abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh to increase its acidity, after devouring Abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh, Red Thorn was no longer that afraid of the withering characteristic in Abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flames. As a source-type lifeform that evolved by devouring flesh, Red Thorn had also grasped a portion of this withering characteristic and fire resistance. Of course, only red thorns or tet possessed such fire resistance. As for the ramets and child ramets that red thorn produced, their fire resistance was still very weak. However, Lin Yuan believed that as long as red thorn devoured abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh in the future, red thorn had already grasped a trace of the abyssal dimensional lifeform's blood's withering characteristic, and its fire resistance would continue to increase. At the same time, red thorn's ability to devour abyss-dimensional lifeforms' flesh would likely be passed on to the ramets and child ramets through the spores ejected from the spore cavity. Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 263. The sky in the abyss-dimensional rift was always dark red, and there was no distinction between day and night. It was very easy to lose track of time while training in the abyss-dimensional rift. Only when one was extremely fatigued would they remember that a long time had passed and that they needed to rest. The ground was also a boundless purplish-black color. There were rugged rock ravines and smooth areas that seemed to be formed by flowing lava. The air was filled with a dense smell of sulfur, and the temperature was maintained at nearly 50 degrees Celsius. It required constant hydration. Time flew by, and Lin Yuan had already been training in the abyss-dimensional rift for a month. Lin Yuan was already used to the abyss-dimensional rift's vile environment. A level 4 horned pseudomorphing demon was struggling fiercely in the midst of the boiling quicksand. The struggling horned terror demon was spitting out sticky liquid-like flames that could almost be considered brown flames. The class 4 horned terror demon had the strength of a platinum fae. The sticky liquid-like brown flames that the horned terror demon spat out had an extremely strong withering characteristic. Even a platinum plant-type fae's roots would be immediately damaged after coming into contact with a little bit of the flames, and the area that came into contact with the flames would wither. If the flames were to come into contact with too many of them, the platinum fae's vitality would be corroded by the flames with the extremely strong withering characteristic, causing it to die. All of a sudden, the horned terror demon, which was struggling violently in the surging quicksand sea, suddenly stopped showing signs of life. It was as though something in the sea of sand had struck it and killed it in a single strike. The class 4 horned terror demon was an evolved form of the class 2 horned demon. Due to the complexity of the class 2 horned demon's genetic model, its evolution potential was extremely high. In fact, some extremely talented class 2 horned demons could even evolve into class 5 burning horned demons after evolving into class 4 horned terror demons. A class 5 burning horn demon's combat strength was equivalent to a diamond fae. It was already considered the pinnacle of combat strength in the uncontrolled class 3 abyss-dimensional rift. This class 4 horned pseudomorphing demon, which was equivalent to a platinum fae, was still unable to block the all-out sneak attack of the heart-penetrating iron line, which was equivalent to a platinum 3/flawless fae. Lin Yuan let out a breath of relief. For the past month, Lin Yuan had been training in the controlled class 3 abyss-dimensional rift. After this month of blood and fire, Lin Yuan had a clearer understanding of his strength. At the same time, he could now achieve true compatibility with the source sand. With such compatibility, Lin Yuan could command the source sand to attack, defend, or control with the greatest effect based on his thoughts. It was just like when he had commanded Chai-Mi and Red Thorn to fight. For over a month, Lin Yuan had been letting the source sand rely on its instincts to create sand in the purplish-black soil. Even Lin Yuan did not know how many grains of sand the Gold Eye/Fantasy Eye source sand had created in the ground under his feet without stopping for a month. Although the source sand's strength had already reached Gold Eye/Fantasy Eye. However, as an elemental source-type life form, the source sand's intelligence was not high even if it was a Gold/Fantasy breed. The source sand, which had advanced to a fantasy breed, could only transmit simple and vague thoughts. However, as the source sand's gravel underground spread out in a large area, the source sand's gravel spread out. Through its control of the gravel and its perception of spiritual power, the source sand had already discovered many fire-type spiritual ingredients. As long as the source sand sensed these spiritual ingredients, the large amount of gravel hidden under the purplish-black soil would surge out under the source sand's control. It would wrap the spiritual ingredients in the sand and bring them underground. Finally, according to the source sand's will, it would transport them to Lin Yuan's feet. For the past month, apart from training his strength, Lin Yuan had also obtained quite a lot of fire-type spiritual ingredients. The harvest of fire-type spiritual ingredients in this Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift was also quite plentiful. After the source sand's gravel was spread out under the ground, its ability to search for treasures was really not just for show. Of course, during this month, Lin Yuan had also understood some truths that he had never truly understood even in his 2 lives. That was the principle of human heart upward and human nature downward. Humans were divided into good and evil, and so was human nature. Humans always wanted to be able to become better, so the human heart was never satisfied. Therefore, the human heart never had a limit. As for human nature downward, it meant that when humans wanted to achieve a certain goal, in order to satisfy the greed in their hearts, they would unconditionally lower their human nature's bottom line. Therefore, human nature never had a bottom line. In this Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift, apart from the Abyss Dimensional Lifeforms attacks, Lin Yuan had also encountered 3 waves of attacks from Spirit Chi professionals. The reason Lin Yuan had been attacked by these 3 waves of Spirit Chi professionals was that he did not have any experience training in the wilderness. Lin Yuan had been attacked by these 3 waves of Spirit Chi professionals because he had not had any experience training in the wilderness. When Lin Yuan had taken out food from his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box, he had been seen by the other Spirit Chi professionals. These 3 waves of Spirit Chi professionals had wanted to kill him, allowing Lin Yuan to truly understand the dangers of training in the dimensional rift. Lin Yuan did not have the slightest bit of mercy toward these Spirit Chi professionals who wanted to kill him. Those who wanted to kill, would always be killed. Ever since Lin Yuan had been ambushed by Chen Zhao and Chen Rui in the royal capital's outskirts, he had already made a decision in his heart. Lin Yuan was still the same person he had been in the past. His heart was like a flower that grew toward the sun. However, against those who wanted to kill him, Lin Yuan would also use the most cruel methods. His life was his, and no one could take it away. If they wanted to take it, they would die. These Spirit Chi professionals who wanted to kill him for his treasures were all buried in this endless underground gravel. Lin Yuan knew that these Spirit Chi professionals who were exploring the dimensional rift wanted to kill him because they were after his wealth. Therefore, after these Spirit Chi professionals were devoured by the source sand, their wealth naturally went to Lin Yuan's hands. As for the wealth in the hands of these Spirit Chi professionals who wanted to kill him, Lin Yuan really did not care about it. These miscellaneous spiritual materials and those radiance dollars added up to just over 100,000 were just a drop in the bucket for Lin Yuan now. Lin Yuan would not keep these resources. He planned to take them to Zhou Jiesen's Star Web store after the training and let her help him sell them. Lin Yuan was now a major shareholder of Zhou Jiesen's Star Web store, and Lin Yuan's Star Web store's profits were even more than Zhou Jiesen's. During this period of time, Lin Yuan's purchase with no loss store's profits were already not a small sum. However, if Chimey saw Lin Yuan's purchase with no loss store's wealth and then looked at its live streaming room's profits, it would definitely say that none of them could fight. At first, Lin Yuan had an exceptionally uncomfortable feeling in his heart during his first massacre. However, this uncomfortable feeling slowly dissipated after Lin Yuan digested it on his own. Lin Yuan looked at the purplish-red sky in the Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift and said softly, "If one wishes to shake the world, one must create waves on the flat ground." Since Lin Yuan had already decided to establish his private faction. In the process of his private faction's rise, it was inevitable that it would be accompanied by killings. The rise of a faction would never be peaceful. However, Lin Yuan also had his own ideas about the development of his private faction. Lin Yuan had always known where his advantages were. His advantages were the high concentration of inexhaustible spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone and his ability to enhance phase. Therefore, Lin Yuan's private faction planned to first collect resources and accumulate wealth. Lin Yuan did not want to establish a private faction with a large number of people. Instead, he wanted to build an organization where everyone in the organization was made up of absolute elites. In his previous life, Lin Yuan had also seen a lot of anime when he was young. It was like the Akatsuki organization in Naruto. The 10 Blades in the Realm. Such a faction was what Lin Yuan wanted to build. Lin Yuan's private faction was built on the floating island whale's back. The floating island whale was hidden in the clouds all day long, just like the flowing clouds in the sky. The flowing clouds in the sky had always been out of this world and rarely had an impact on the mortal world. It was unlike a faction that was like a thunderstorm with a great momentum. Once it rained, the world would know. However, no matter how powerful the thunderstorm was, it was ultimately only a moment of heroism. However, if anything dared to anger the flowing clouds hidden in the sky, the clouds would surge, and the sky would change. At that moment, Lin Yuan's brows suddenly raised. According to the source-type Source Sand's perception when it was exploring the spiritual ingredients underground, it seemed to have sensed an object that contained a huge amount of spirit chi. Moreover, this object seemed to be a plant. Based on the Source Sand's perception, Lin Yuan knew that this object had extremely long roots underground. After sensing the Source Sand's perception again and again, Lin Yuan finally confirmed that this plant that contained a huge amount of spirit chi was very small. It was so small that it might not even be as big as Lin Yuan's tightly clenched fist. Therefore, Lin Yuan gave the Source Sand an order to try and bring this plant that contained a huge amount of spirit chi over. The Source Sand sensed Lin Yuan's will and immediately started to move according to Lin Yuan's order. At that moment, Lin Yuan could sense that the Source Sand was facing an abnormally firm obstruction. Lin Yuan immediately injected spiritual power into the Source Sand and let it use its exclusive skill, Metal Consume Manifestation. It precipitated the day and night spirit silver in the sea of sand to form feathers and started to chisel and dig at this firm obstruction. Just as the Source Sand broke through the obstruction, a green flame suddenly burst into the sky in the distance. This green flame burst into the sky with a shocking momentum. It immediately dyed the purplish-red sky of the controlled class 3-dimensional rift with a layer of green. Read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.